All right, folks, we are live. I've got a guest here. So as always, I am deeply suspicious of technology. So for those of you who can hear me, post something in a comment. And I know Will can hear me, so that's a good sign. And if anybody's watching, okay, we've got one person watching. So before I start talking about the actual topic of the day about precision rifles, I am going to introduce the whiskey of the day. I have started this little tradition during my live casts. Today it's Breckenridge. Haven't tried this one in a while. For those who are concerned about alcohol and guns, well, like me, there's a bunch of guns here and there is no ammo. And I'm not planning to get hammered anyway. I don't know about Will, he looks a little hammered already, but that just may be the normal look. So tomorrow is the start of the Jewish New Year. So to all of you guys, Happy New Year. Ooh, this is good stuff. Should have opened it sooner. Okay, so hey Serge. So Mr. Serge Dubovsky is the gentleman who asked me about precision rifles. So buddy, this one is for you. I'll let a few more people join. I have a few new toys that I just received that I'll be playing with. So I'm mostly going to show these to make Will feel jealous.
Of course.
March 1 to 10, dual focal plane, day bright.
Yep, that'll do it.
Feeling jealous yet?
A little bit.
Okay, now I know you like to hunt once in a while.
Yeah.
March 1.5 to 15 by 42. This is with the sunshade. This is how big this stupid thing is, and it is nice.
A 1.5 to 15
by 42. It's second focal plane. Right?
Okay.
So it's more of a kind of hunting crossover, but also for FAR competition, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Nice. Yep.
And are you ready? Now I'm going to really make you feel bad. I brought this here just for you. This is not the topic of the conversation today.
All right. Oh, don't do that. Don't do that.
They're about to go into production. This is one of the first production models.
Don't do that.
Dude, this is so much better than the one we saw at SHOT Show. They added some extra algorithms. You don't see the glare from the muzzle as much. The dot is brighter. They bumped up the contrast on the thermal. This is, for third year running, this is probably still the coolest optical thing I've seen in this world of ours. This is so nice.
Yeah, well, if there was a way to buy it, I'd figure it out.
Oh, there will be shortly, but it's a lot of money. So they loaned it to me for a couple of months. So I figure I have enough time to put, 20,000, 30,000 rounds through it.
Yeah.
That'll be, yeah. So for those of you who don't know what this is a Steiner CQT. It is a combination of a reflex sight, regular red dot, with a thermal. Up front here is a thermal camera, and it gets fused with the reflex dot. So you can run it like a reflex dot or like a thermal with a reflex on it. So you can use a magnifier and all that. This is not a long-range precision thing. But this is probably the best general purpose close quarter sight I've ever seen. And because you have a normal reflex, you can actually put a magnifier behind it. This is the coolest thing ever. For precision, there are other things, but this is something. When Will and I last SHOT Show, when we saw this, I told him this was going to be the coolest thing he's going to see. He argued. And
I still haven't seen anything cooler, and it's been almost a year later.
Yeah, this is, and you have to keep in mind, right? Both Will and I are precision guys at heart. Well, I'm mostly at heart. He's actually a precision guy. And this thing is cool.
Yeah.
I'll do some videos on this. I'll show you what it looks to look through it and all that sort of stuff. This thing is just freaking amazing. Okay. Anyhow, so a few people here already. Couple of things. The T-shirts I'm making that a lot of you guys are gonna get will look like this. I like this color a little more. Okay. The whiskey glasses will be here next week, so I'll post some pictures. And once that's done, I'm gonna stop plastering my logo and everything and go back to looking at glass. Okay. All right. So precision rifles. How do I choose a precision rifle? The original question that Serge asked, I'm gonna minimize Will so that I can rant for a little bit, and then I'll let him tell me that I'm full of shit. So the original question was, well, do you go to a custom builder or what, or how do you configure it? It's not as simple of a question as you may think. And I'm sort of my empty wallet is a testament to some learned lessons. I've spent a lot of money on different stuff until I figured out what I want out of a precision rifle. And it was not such a simple exercise. And what I want out of a precision rifle is not the same thing that, for example, Will wants. And but what he chooses for competition would make no sense for me, right? And what I use for precision would not make no sense for him. He's a PRS shooter. So it's not a simple thing. You have to kind of figure out what kind of shooting you want to do and what kind of a thing appeals to you personally. And what I learned the hard way, originally I thought I'd get the most flexible solution figured out as I go along. So I bought a Gen 1 Desert Tactical in 338 LaPour, and then I added a 6.5 by 47 barrel to it. And that 6.5 by 47 barrel is still probably overall may have been the most accurate gun I've ever shot. That thing was stupid accurate. It made me look like I know what I'm doing. Okay. It's not such a simple thing to make me look like I know what I'm doing when shooting. I'm not a very good shot. But I found myself using that thing less and less because two things happened. First thing that happened is that I got busy and I didn't really have time to reload, and my choice of calibers was deeply inappropriate for somebody who's trying to stop reloading. And another thing that happened, that bloody thing was heavy. And I learned that I like to shoot from a sort of weird different positions and standing and all that. And I want to do it all with one gun. And that's just my personal insanity, perhaps, right? But everybody has a personal insanity. This one happened to be mine. So I shed a few tears and sold my Desert Tech, and I bought this. That gun just landed on the CQT. Oh, it's not mine, it's okay. First durability test. And I went and bought this guy. Let's see. This here is the Fix by Q. This particular one has a 308 barrel, but you can use different ones. The scope on this, Jared, is indeed a tangent theta, 5 to 25 by 56. Okay. The reason I switched to this gun is that with the same tangent, it's about 4 or 5 pounds lighter than my Desert Tech was. And it takes conventional magazines, and it shoots 308. Although if I was starting off, I didn't already have a ton of 308, I would probably go with 6.5 Creedmoor or something like that, right? It is not a good competition rifle. It is too light. It's harder to spot your own shots. It's harder to see trace, although you can probably modify the caliber and do other things. But I'm not a competition shooter. And for the distances that I shoot, this turned out to be an exceptional precision rifle because the thing is stupid accurate. While with a different scope, I can hunt with this thing. And I have a lot of guns, but because I like to play with, but there are only like 3 or 4 that actually shoot. Right, and this is one of them, and I do almost everything with it. I don't necessarily shoot to a mile very much anymore, although I'm planning to, and for that, I'm probably going to build a different gun. Okay? But right now, my precision gun is this, and it does everything that I want and provides fun and challenge. And when I go to the range, I am not on the verge of developing a hernia any moment, and I can do a ton of things with it. And with all that, the gun I use the most right now for precision shooting is this. Okay. It's not technically a rifle. It's technically a pistol with a 7-inch blackout barrel that happens to be freaky accurate with subsonic blackout, and I'm lobbing 220 grain 30 cal bullets at subsonic speeds out to 750 yards, which is providing more than enough challenge for my shooting ability, and then some. Okay, so what I've learned is that I'm not necessarily looking for the longest distance. I'm looking for a challenge. And my challenge du jour that I've been at, and I've been at it for a while, but my challenge du jour is really trying to shoot subsonics fairly far out. Okay, I'm having more fun with this than I ever had with my 338 Lapua. And the stupid 338 was accurate and amazing, and I almost got kicked out of a range from Angeles once when they caught me shooting out the chains on the 300-yard hangers. It was a nice gun, but this is more fun. I don't get beat up. I don't spend $5 on every shot. And it's harder to hit something at 750 yards with subsonic blackout than it was for me to hit something at near a mile with a 338 Lapua. Or probably close in terms of complexity. Distance is distance, right? So which gun you really get right now is not terribly critical, because it's, as long as you go with somebody reputable, it's difficult to get a shitty gun. Everybody's getting good. And I'm sure we will have something to say about this. Right? If I was looking for a new precision rifle, scratch everything, if I didn't have anything yet, I would start with some thoughts on the ammo. The new trend is the high pressure cartridges. Okay. The first commercially available one is the 277 Fury by SIG, sort of a high pressure version of the cartridge they're doing for the military, where you can use regular pressure stuff or shoot high pressure excuse me, ammo in actions that allow it, and get more out of the same small case. Originally, I invited another gentleman here who has a company, and they're also doing something similar. Unfortunately, they were in the path of the hurricane, so he had to evacuate, and he couldn't make it. I'm going to drag him out for the next livecast. They are also doing some interesting things where you can have a rifle that shoots a common commercial caliber, 6.5, 300, one of them, while you have the option of having, for the specialized cases where you really want to reach way out there, where you have the option of something that shoots at a significantly higher pressure, and the gun is designed to handle it, that will give you more range and more distance for those rare occasions when you have 2 miles to shoot. Okay, so if you're choosing one, start with the cartridge. Okay. And if you choose to go high pressure, there are not that many options. But if I was starting now, I'd probably be looking at one of those. Okay. If you don't want to do that, buy a high-end gun from AI, or if you want a light one, buy it from Q. All the latest Desert Techs are good. And it's very, very difficult to go wrong with one of those. Okay. If, on the other hand, you're the type of guy who really likes to tinker with stuff, you can probably use Will's approach, and he'll go over his competition rifle in a moment, right? You can buy one of the really nice Remington clone actions, get a really nice chassis. Lately, I've been really thinking about the AMP chassis by Tierney Arms, which looks very, very interesting to me. I don't know if Will has seen it. I've never laid eyes on it, but the Tierney guy and I have a mutual acquaintance, and he's been talking about it. I might look at it more carefully. But you can buy an action, you can buy a barrel that's head-spaced, you can put it all together yourself, put it in a chassis that you like or a stock that you like. With a lot of modern chassis, you don't have to glass bed them, you don't have to get your hands too dirty, but you will have the satisfaction of building your own gun. Okay. So that's kind of that's sort of my take on it. Like I said, if I was starting now, I'd do high pressure cartridge and a action rifle that's designed for it, because I think that gives me the most flexibility for the future. But there's more than one way to go about this. So I'll pull up a question. Not question, sort of comment. You're right, Serge. Don't go overboard. You don't need necessarily top of the line, whatever else. But if you like nice stuff, buy nice stuff. I had a Savage before I had a Desert Tech that was very, very accurate. It had a nice barrel. It was nearly as accurate as a Desert Tech. I've shot a lot with a friend's RPR and all these kind of guns. They're really nice guns, and they will get you the accuracy. They will not get you the same experience as a high-quality gun. It is not the same. You have to shoot it differently. They are harder to shoot because of lock time, stock design, recoil vectors, you name it. Right? If you can afford it, if it is within your budget, go mid to high end. Now, you don't have to go crazy on a caliber. You don't need crazy magnums and all that sort of stuff. But as far as the gun itself goes, if you're not planning to be buying, 68 guns in the next 12 months, buy one nice gun. Okay. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Will, and he'll tell me that I'm wrong. And we'll go from there. So how do I make you bigger and me smaller? Video-wise, otherwise, then there's no chance. Let's see. There you go.
Oh, there we go. All right. Yeah. All right. So I guess I'll touch on Serge's comment real quick, briefly. So yeah, I don't think that you do need to go overboard, but there are a lot of guys that want to start with top of the line equipment, and there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely. I do agree that a lot of your first rifle choice should be kind of based on caliber. First, you should decide, okay, am I going to reload and dive into that realm? Or am I going to stick to mostly factory available ammo? I think if you're going to strictly shoot factory, I personally steer people towards 308 or 6.5 Creed, depending on what the application of the rifle is for. Both of those have plenty of top of the line match ammo if you want to take it to a competition and stuff like that. And you can also find some cheap ammo to plink at the range and stuff like that too. So it doesn't cost you a whole lot. And you can find 308 and 6.5 Creed on just about any, box shelf store that there is, especially with everything going on right now, at least from my side of it, because I hand load, small rifle primers are, unicorn tiers at this point. Good luck finding some, along with any of the popular powders and stuff like that. So, that's always an option. As far as the high pressure stuff, I have seen a little bit of that. I do remember the SIG and the 277 Fury and stuff like that. Again, I think that that's something a little more specific to what the mission of your rifle you want. So as a general purpose rifle, I agree that it gives you the absolute most flexibility. If it's something for more of like range plinking and competition, you'll never see anybody shooting anything high pressure. If anything, we're trying to stick on the low end of recoil with a heavy rifle, just because, again, the application is different. Let me grab my rifle real quick, and I guess I can run that down. I see Serge asked about the Wooks Furiosa. Actually, I really like that chassis a lot. So I spoke to the Wooks guys not that long ago, asking if they were going to come out with a detachable box magazine version, because right now it's just a BDL. And they said that the box mag version is undergoing testing right now. So that should be super awesome. I do want to eventually try to test one of those myself.
So I will interject for a moment. I do not have personal experience with the Wooks Furiosa. I know 5 or 6 people who have tried it, and they are betting about 50%. Half of them didn't work worth shit, quality control issues, nothing fit, and the company was deeply unhelpful. Wow. But half of them, everything fit, and they like it.
Okay.
I think it's either 5 or 6 people. So if it's 5, it's not half. I don't remember the exact breakdown. So I don't know these guys.
Yeah,
I've heard the name a few times. They are on my list to go visit a SHOT Show and politely inquire what gives.
Yeah, definitely.
And basically, this is such a saturated market that You have to be giving out blowjobs with guns to get away with poor quality control.
Yeah, absolutely.
No personal experience. For what I heard, I would be careful, but the designs do look interesting.
Well, I'll definitely keep that in mind for sure. But yeah, just on the surface, the design does look, to me, it looks attractive, like as a chassis, kind of wood hybrid. So I like the overall aesthetics of it, but I haven't actually seen one out in the wild yet. So I'll keep that in mind. Let me grab my rifle here. This thing's a heavy pig. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, so this is definitely a competition-focused rifle. Let me put the bipod here. So this is going to be, I guess, start with the chassis. This is a MPA matrix chassis. So obviously with chassis, as you touched on, you don't have to, glass bed or do anything like that. It's 2 screws, bolts in the action, and there you go. This is a Curtis custom action. This is their vector action. It's a 60-degree throw, so a little bit shorter than your standard 90. You don't have to come all the way up.
Is it a Remington footprint?
Yes, this is a Remington 700 clone. Most custom actions are Remington 700 clones these days, at least the top end ones, just so that they all fit in a multitude of chassis and stocks and everything else you want to change and tinker. Obviously, Z-Comp 5-27. This thing's still dirty, and I haven't cleaned it in God knows how long.
Be clear, so there's nothing obvious about it. It is an awesome scope, and Z-Comp happens to sponsor you.
Yes, absolutely. That is full transparency. I do shoot for Z-Comp. That was by choice on my end, being that I was in talks with a few other scope manufacturers, but I just felt like Z-Comp as a whole kind of embodied what I wanted out of a scope as a total package and things like that. So that's why I went with this. But I also want to be very clear that this specific Z-Comp I already had. I purchased this with my own money before any of that happened. So
good shooter, bad businessman. Got it.
Yeah, I guess the timing didn't work out. Oh man. And then moving forward, SkyPod, which this is the triple leg model. So this is the longest version that they make. I had a single leg model, but I really love the versatility of the SkyPods. And then exterior weights to balance out the rifle so that it'll pretty much just sit here. And
how much does this thing weigh altogether with the scope?
So as you see it here with this bipod, and this bipod's really heavy, actually. This bipod's a little over 2 pounds, but this would be about 23.5 pounds.
So it's almost exactly double the weight of my fixed with the tangent theta.
Yeah, probably. And I'm shooting a much smaller caliber. So this is currently chambered in 6BR. So for those of you that are kind of unfamiliar, it's a small little 6mm bullet, loading 30 grains of powder in it. So not a lot, over a 105 burger bullet, but that's one of the most popular calibers to shoot right now. Of course, hand loaded, but it's pretty much the rundown. Like you, I also had a Desert Tech at one point. Took it to when I first started shooting competitions, took it to a couple matches, and quickly learned the shortcomings of that particular of the bullpup platform in general for the specific sport. I do love the bullpup platform as a concept. I took it hunting. I liked the shorter overall design and things like that. But for competition, at least I should preface, if you want to really be truly competitive, like at the top level, it's not doing you any favors. But I loved
so can you elaborate on why? Because I'm not a competition shooter, and I think this is an interesting point.
Yeah, so a couple things is when match directors sort of design the course of fire, they always proof the course of fire. And something that I've kind of noticed is every single one of them shoots a traditional rifle, right? So when they make these stages and they make you shoot off these obstacles, a lot of them can be kind of tricky with the bolt back here. So like a tank trap, for example, if they angle it in the right way where one of the pillars is coming back behind your head, you have to like cant the rifle over to get enough space to rack the bolt, because it's otherwise your hand won't fit through there. Another point is because they tend to be so rear heavy. Now that's great for offhand shots, you know, like in a hunting scenario, possibly stuff like that. But when you're trying to balance it on a barricade and you want the rifle to absorb all the recoil, because it's leaning back, and now you have some downward cheek pressure. Now you're really leaning back, and obviously muzzle flip, muzzle rise when the round goes off. So now it's even harder to stay on target. So in order to get something like a Desert Tech truly balanced right in the front or in the middle for center of gravity, you'd have to throw a super long, super thick barrel on it. And what ends up happening with that is, okay, so you move your center of gravity forward, but in the specific design of the Desert Tech, the trigger guard is the only thing that you can use as a barricade stop. And what ends up happening is sometimes if you throw it up against the barricade and you've got a bag that it's resting on, now you have no room to grip the actual grip, because there's nothing there. Another problem is, to be honest, is the magazines. So obviously 10-round magazines are pretty much standard for competition shooters. And the Desert Tech magazines, the 10-rounders are so long that
single stack.
Yeah, single stack, so long. And to be honest, they have feeding issues sometimes. They're about 50-50 in my experience. I had 4, 2 of them worked really smooth, and the other 2 was like racking sandpaper.
What caliber was yours?
I had 6.5 Creed and 308.
Interesting. So I had 6.5 by 47 and 338, 0 issues.
Okay, yeah. So the 5-rounders worked great for me, but the 10-rounders, I had 4 of them. Like I said, 2 worked smooth as butter, and 2 of them were like racking over sandpaper. But the length can become an issue, because when you're shooting prone, the magazine will hit if you shoot at a certain angle, it'll hit the ground.
That was one of the things that annoyed me. I spent a lot of time shooting from the bench, and then I realized that's not doing me any favors. Started shooting more prone, standing, sitting, whatever else. That magazine was getting in the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's just a couple of things. Again, I really love the Desert Tech platform as a concept, and for a general purpose rifle, I think it's great. Specifically for competition, there's a lot of downsides if you want to compete truly at, you know, some of the higher levels of the sport. But if you're just out there shooting for fun, and you get more use out of that particular platform than, you know, just competition shooting, by all means, you know.
Very cool. Thank you. So we'll have a couple of questions. I'll let you take a stab on it, and I'll add some commentary.
Okay, what is your take on a carbon fiber barrel for PRS matches? Weight is not really concerned. Yeah, so I actually have a carbon fiber barrel for this action that I use for hunting in 6.5 PRC. And it's approved carbon fiber, 26-inch. I forgot the twist. I think it's like a 1 in 7 twist. So I love it for hunting. Obviously for PRS, you want the weight of the steel barrel, but not only that, because you shoot so many rounds, you'll burn through those barrels quick. So like for me, you know, a 6.5 Creed barrel will last me maybe, before I pull it for match use, it'll last me like maybe 6 months. So if I was shooting carbon fiber barrels, the additional cost of the carbon fiber barrel would just eat me up on something like that. So if you don't shoot a lot and you want to pack around the rifle and stuff like that, I mean, they seem to be pretty accurate. I have seen some reports that, and I've talked to some guys that haven't been able to get them shoot. I think one tip that I would really give guys.
Okay, hold on. Apparently YouTube killed the stream. I wonder why. Okay.
All right. Well, I'm going to put this down for a second.
Huh, how interesting. I wonder what happened. Okay, I am gonna end the broadcast and I'm gonna start it again.
Okay.
And let's see if it works.
All right.
It looks like YouTube killed the stream for some terms of service violation. I wonder if we're not supposed to show guns during these things. So I'm gonna send Will another invite, and let's see. Let's see what the hell happened. Okay. All right. I sent Will another invitation, and let's see if. Perhaps you're right, Kevin. So all my channel is gun related. So anyhow, generally for future reference, there is a different tech company called locals.com started by Dave Rubin and guys. And they basically are aiming creators like me who are not exactly big tech doesn't like us, doesn't like gun people, doesn't like Second Amendment people, doesn't like anti-communism people, and all that stuff. Okay, Will is back. Okay. So yeah, but maybe we're not supposed to show guns during live stream. I don't know. What I was telling people is that there is this new tech company called locals.com by Dave Rubin that they're creating all sorts of this platform for creators. And they just approved for me to do a community page. It's the same basic thing as this YouTube membership. You create a page and you can have a paywall instead of affiliates and advertising and all that. You can have your audience sort of sponsor you. That's my backup in case YouTube and Facebook and all these guys go completely nuts. I'm going to build that up. My YouTube thing is mostly guns and optics and a little bit of politics. That page for now is going to be more politics and a little bit of guns and optics. But if YouTube kicks us out, I'll just switch everything over to that when I have copies of all my videos. I can re-upload them there. So nothing is going to disappear. So Chen, we have no freaking clue. Before we all got killed, you were asking why you would choose 6mm arc instead of 6 Creedmoor or something like that. Was that the question?
Yeah. That was the question. I saw that.
So let's do this. First question that Will was answering was about carbon fiber barrels. I think you were mostly done with that, right?
Yeah. The only other thing that I wanted to add there was, so I've talked to a lot of guys that use carbon fiber barrels for their hunting rigs and stuff like that. The biggest piece of advice that I could give if you want to go with a carbon fiber barrel is make sure, because I've seen so many guys get burned by this, make sure, please, that you go to a gunsmith that has experience chambering carbon fiber barrels, because it's not the same as chambering a stainless steel barrel.
Correct.
And I've seen that a number of times where a guy says, "Oh yeah, I can do it, no problem." He ends up stressing the interior of the barrel, stressing the throat or the chamber or something in there, because essentially what it is it's a steel barrel that's super thin on the inside, and then it's wrapped with carbon fiber on the outside. So it's not actually, it's still steel on the inside, the throat and everything else, and obviously the rifling. So they're much easier to stress because they're so thin on the inside than a traditional stainless steel. So just make sure that you go to a top gunsmith that has experience chambering carbon fiber barrels, so you don't waste your blank. Because I've seen some guys pay, the $700, $750 for a proof blank before it's even chambered, and then it gets trashed.
Bingo. So I use a proof barrel on my fix that I showed you earlier. I'm not going to show it to you now, or they'll kill us again. So I've tried almost every, other than Bartley, and I think I've tried every carbon fiber wrap barrel out there at some point. And I've talked to a lot of people, and I sort of have the advantage of talking to a lot of gun makers. And almost everyone is in pretty much complete agreement. For hunting, they're awesome. They save you a lot of weight and all that. For prolonged shooting strings, you will do better with the same quality solid steel regular barrel. Okay. I've never seen a carbon fiber wrapped barrel where the groups did not open up with heat much more readily than they do with the good, nice, solid steel barrel. And on top of it, another problem with most carbon fiber barrels and proof so far is the only one I've seen that doesn't do that, is the point of impact also wanders. Not only the groups open up, but the aggregate point of impact also wanders a little bit with heat, and then it returns.
Yep.
Serge is asking about Bartlein. No, so the only thing I know about Bartlein is that they make exceptional barrels, but of all the high-end barrels, they are more rejects with Bartlein than with almost everyone else. Gun manufacturers test them before they put them in. The ones they put them in are great, but there is a significant number of rejects. So if somebody doesn't screen them, you can get a bad one. They started doing carbon fiber stuff comparatively recently, and I just haven't had a chance to get one yet. And the guy who owns Bartlein and a few other things hates my ass with a passion, so I'm not itching to. There are a lot of people like that, Will. You?
Yeah, fair.
Something about the things I say.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah. So I'm not itching to spend my money on one just yet.
Okay.
If I have an opportunity, if I find a good deal, I'll get one and I'll try it out. Like I said, I was actually, just for shits and giggles, I was thinking about getting some sort of 700 clone and putting it in that amp chassis by Tierney Arms, because I'm kind of intrigued by how he did this.
Yeah, I've seen that chassis.
And if I do that, I might get some barrel that I'm curious about, or maybe carbon fiber Bartlein or something like that.
Yeah.
But for now, nothing bad about their carbon fiber. I just don't have personal experience with it. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it in the carbon fiber barrels. The next question we had from Chen was on 6mm arc versus, Chen, what was it, 6 Creedmoor, or what were you asking about?
Yeah, I believe it was 6 Creedmoor is what I read the question as.
Okay.
I think I still have it up here. Let me double check. Yep, it was 6 Creed in a short action bolt action rifle was the question.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, so originally 6 Arc, in all honesty, was really designed as a 6mm AR round. Not that it can't be shot out of a bolt gun, but it's really designed more for an AR and AR length magazines. I'm talking about like a PMag that doesn't have the same internal overall length as something like an a traditional AICS mag that we're mostly shooting in competitions. As far as why would you choose a 6 Arc over a 6 Creed? I mean, application first and foremost. Are you going to shoot it out of an AR? In the question you stated a bolt gun, so I guess my next question would be, what's the purpose of the bolt gun? You know, if it's going to be for competitions, I'd steer you a little bit more towards 6 Creed, only because it's been around for a little bit longer. It takes advantage of AICS mags, which is probably what you're going to be using in a bolt action competition rifle. It's got higher velocity, so it's less wind the further distance you get out, which is huge in competition. Wind is always the great equalizer of all shooters, no matter how good you are. I mean, if you want pros towards a 6 Arc, barrel life over a 6 Creed. So one thing that I just want to touch real quickly on is 6 Creed. A lot of people, you know, don't realize that for competition, if you're going to be shooting matches, the barrel life on that thing is super short. Most everybody that I know that shoots a 6 Creed, you're pulling your barrel at 1,200, 1,500 rounds max. And, you know, for a lot of us, we'll shoot that many rounds in 2 months, you know, and so it's just not feasible to be replacing my barrel every 2 to 3 months. So that's the main downside to a 6 Creed. If it had longer barrel life, I'd shoot a 6 Creed personally, but there's no way that I could afford to replace my barrels every 2 months.
Okay. So me personally, not being a competition shooter, it depends on what kind of gun it is. I have a thing for lightweight guns, and 6 Arc can go on a micro action like the Mini Fix or all of those. So I happen to have a 243 Winchester, but in a large frame AR. It is very nicely accurate and all that. There's just something about those, you know, big 6mm that just doesn't agree with me. Can't put my finger on it. If I was building a general purpose bolt gun, if you're not shooting beyond 1,000, 1,100 yards, I'd do 6mm arc. More factory ammo. Hornet is going to support it up the wazoo because of the enormous AR market. There'll be a lot more resources on 6 ARC than on 6 Creedmoor. And with an efficient bullet, it's a really, really nice. There's a lot of history behind the 6 ARC because it's existed in almost that exact form as 6mm AR turbo for quite a long time as a Wildcat. So there's a lot of mileage behind it. It's an extremely efficient and very, very mild-mannered cartridge. It can do almost everything. I'm probably going to switch to 6 ARC in my precision AR. I've been shooting Grendel for the longest time. Once I shoot out the ammo I have, I'm probably going to switch out to 6 ARC because for the things that I do, it makes more difference. But if I hunted more, I'd stay with a Grendel. To me, the ultra-fast 6s don't make too much sense. I don't like the recoil impulse. It is different. Right? It is not heavy, but it's very snappy. It's weird, kind of.
Yeah.
Light, fast bullet. I don't like that. It messes with me in some weird way. So if I'm going bigger, I'm also going up in caliber a little bit. Like if I'm going to that case, I'm probably going to stick with 6.5 Creedmoor, or even go bigger to 6.5 PRC if you want it to be flatter.
Yeah.
At 6.5 PRC, it'll kick a little more, but it's still not ridiculous. And the barrel life, while shorter than Creed, is substantially longer than 6mm Creedmoor.
Yeah, it's like a little in between.
Yeah, I would probably go that way. But once again, unfortunately, for a lot of these things, there's no real easy replacement for experience. Like I've learned all sorts of very expensive lessons over the years.
You and me both.
Well, I've caused a few of you expensive lessons.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah. So that was kind of fun. When I lived in LA, would go meet with Will at the range, and he'd look at some latest and greatest optic that I was testing. I send those things back. 2 weeks later, he comes over pale and sad and broke, but with a nice glass.
Yeah.
But
that's about how it works.
Pretty much, yeah. I'm basically like a drug dealer in many ways. I'm the enabler.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, but anyhow, so that's kind of the story on the 6 Creedmoor. So unless we get some more questions, I'm going to go on some other gun-related diatribe. And one of the things I also want to talk about is a chassis with a pistol grip versus a... so I'm guessing I'm responsible for this one, right? Probably.
Hey, listen, that's not a bad choice at all, man. Really, I don't know if there is, anything negative to say there, to be honest, other than your wallet probably feels a lot lighter.
Well, but look at the top. It's basically, at the very top, it's March, ZCO, and Tangent, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, so if you're trying to get me to look or feel guilty, it ain't happening anytime soon. There is this saying that Jews are supposedly are born with guilt. I don't know which Jews they're talking about. Not this one. But was I? Yeah, a little bit more on guns. So it's people who learn to shoot with ARs and other pistol grip guns generally transition fairly well to pistol grip type chassis guns. Mm-hmm. And not a single one of them that I've ever seen knows how to manipulate the bolt the right way. Okay, so I shoot my pistol grip bolt guns with my thumb on this side so that I can run the bolt quickly and actually practice to do that. Mm-hmm. It's one of the reasons I like the fix. It's a 45-degree, very short bolt lift, right? If you're holding your thumb on the other side like you're used to with ARs, your bolt handling and gun handling will likely, there are exceptions, but it will likely not be great because it will take a lot of training to not break your shooting position while you're cycling the bolt. Okay. It is a different thing. With a bolt gun, you're not really squeezing this thing. You're hooking around it and trying to pull straight back instead of squeezing and going to the side. And for a lot of people, that is easier with a more conventional looking stock. A lot depends on how you came up shooting and how much you're going to practice. If you shoot, as much as Will does, you can probably get used to everything, right? This is the thing. No, seriously. Right? Yeah. I don't shoot bolt guns. Overall, I probably shoot more than you do. given where I live and where you live.
Yeah, fair.
You mean I spend a lot less time in traffic, and a lot more time at the range.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't shoot precision guns nearly as much as Will does, right? So Will can get used to something much more rapidly than I can, and get used to it quite well. Keep in mind how much time you're gonna spend, shooting, and think about what you learn to shoot with. And if you don't have too many bad habits, well, then it doesn't matter too much what you choose as long as you put in the time and develop the skills. So we got a question from Serge.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a good question. So I can explain why you see this best stuff under 300 all the time. And I talk to a lot of different gun bloggers and all that. It's one of the reasons why I started doing the membership and trying to go away from the affiliate stuff. If you are trying to make a living out of this YouTube or social media stuff, and most of your income comes from putting up affiliate links, people buy a lot more $300 stuff than $3,000 stuff. Okay, and if you are trying to make a living out of this, what you talk about and what you recommend and all that will be to a significant degree driven by what you think your audience will buy. Okay? And I don't like that. I talk about stuff that I find interesting. I talk about things that I get questions about. I have never made a decision on what I'm reviewing based on what I think the bunch of the people there are willing to buy. And there is really very little, quote unquote, under 300, whatever else that is worth buying, whether it's a gun or a scope. There are some adequate guns over there if you shoot twice a year. I remember years ago, was it on the Hyde? It's been so long, there are so many forums that I forget. I was embroiled in this argument with some guy who was telling me that I'm completely full of shit and all that sort of stuff. And then I realized, we were chatting about shooting and all that. I realized, he's primarily a hunter, but he thinks he's Nimrod and all that. And I realized that I shoot more in 2 weeks than he has shot in his entire life. And by the standard of competition shooters, I don't shoot all that much. Right. The corollary of this, the thing that comes out of this is, how low do you go, right? How low do you go while you are still getting decent stuff? And in the modern market, in the grand scheme of things, to get an accurate gun, bolt gun, you don't really have to spend that much.
No.
To get an accurate and nicely handling bolt gun, that's a different thing.
Mm-hmm.
You will spend a little more, right?
Yeah.
Right now, if you want to go production, and you don't want to be tinkering and building stuff, Tikka is probably where it's at. I think you can do a lot with the Tikka. They have the good out of the factory barrels, and when you get tired of the factory stock, there is a good aftermarket support. I think. What do you think, Will?
That's actually my number one recommendation for guys that say, hey, listen, I don't have a lot of money, but I do want to kind of dip my foot in the water of this sport. What's a good base rifle that I can get? Because I can't afford to go custom. And I always tell people, listen, man, go get yourself a Tikka. If you don't want to go for the TAC A1, their top of the line model, the T3X, throw it in a KRG Bravo. That's like a sub $1,000 rifle that'll outshoot you as a beginner shooter in the precision rifle game, and get it in a popular caliber like a 6.5 Creed or a 308 with a 24-inch barrel, and you're off to the races. Throw a bipod on there, an Atlas or something like that, and you can't beat it for the price. And as you said, I like Tikka because there's a good enough aftermarket in terms of stocks and chassis and barrels and stuff like that, that once you do kind of figure out what you want for that next step, you don't necessarily have to go away from the Tikka action right away. You can still use that same action, just rebarrel it to a different caliber or switch the chassis, things like that. So yeah, I do love. And from what I've noticed is, I guess rifle for rifle or pound for pound, Tikkas are the most consistently accurate out of the factory than what I've seen from other brands. A good buddy of mine, Phil Vallejo, is doing a series himself on, he's a really top shooter. I mean, he won PRS championship, 2 years ago? Anyway, he's doing a short series on budget build rifle for precision rifle. And before he started that, we had a quick conversation about, what should it be? Should it be a Bagara? Should it be a Tikka? Some sort of Remington 700? And we both agreed that Tikka just seems to be the most consistent.
I wonder if I can drag him over into this live cast sometime. I like that you're inviting people. Otherwise, people just listen to me bloviate.
Yeah, I'll definitely,
I don't know Philly, but if you happen to talk to him, see if he's
Yeah.
up to it. I'm very curious.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
one other thing to keep in mind. So the most aftermarket support, and guys, we'll get to your questions in a moment. I'm monitoring the chat. So one of the most aftermarket support is for the Remington, but it's not really for the Remington. It's for the Remington footprint.
Yep.
Remington itself is the pits of hell. It's
Absolutely.
like if you compare rifle manufacturers to the states, to the different states, Remington is like the California of guns.
Oh, that
I
hurts,
know,
but it's so true. But it's so true.
It kind of looks pretty, but there's all sorts of rot inside. It's not rot. I've seen so many misaligned. I don't remember when's the last time I saw a Remington where the barrel was screwed in straight. And there is a reason why they're on a bankruptcy of 8008 at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's an iconic name that's been so mismanaged.
Right, and it's really sad.
Wait a second. Do I hear a drone with a large letter R outside my window? No. It's just such a mismanaged brand. But if you're willing to tinker and you're willing to spend a little bit of money, you can get a nice action. I mean, that's what Will did, right? You can get a nice action.
Yeah.
You can get a nice barrel, and you can get a nice stock or chassis, and you're off to the races. And it's going to cost you less than Accuracy International, a lot less, right? You'll need a nice trigger. I mean, there are things, but all of that is there. But you have to be willing to play with it. The big weakness of Tikka compared to some of these actions like what Will is using is that if you want to put on a new barrel, you go to a gunsmith. Okay, for the Curtis that you have, I mean, you just get a barrel and screw it in, right?
Yeah. I call up my gunsmith and say, hey, I need a new barrel, and he's got it to me in less than 2 weeks. Sometimes he's got one sitting on the shelf and he ships it to me and I got it in 3 or 4 days.
So there are aftermarket actions over there where you really need nothing. You just buy a piece, you screw it in and all that. I originally got Desert Tag because of the barrel stuff. I just don't like having to deal with a gunsmith all the time and wait for things. When I switched to Q, to the fix, it's an ER style barrel attachment with an extension. So I can replace when I shoot mine out. And it takes a while to shoot the 308 out, but I think I'm close.
Yeah. Oh, impressive.
Like I said, I talk about optics a lot, but people don't realize how much time I spend shooting.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how terrible I am at it, given how much I practice.
Well, listen, I'll be very frank that honestly, to be able to say that you truly shot out a 308 barrel is something that a lot of people can't say, because a lot of people say, oh, I shot it out. No, you didn't shoot it out. You just forgot to clean it, or you stopped.
No, I did not forget to clean it well.
That's an accomplishment for sure.
Yeah. But that's one of the reasons I got a 308. I don't like changing barrels too much, right?
Yeah.
My plan with this rifle, I'm actually gonna go to 8.6 grit bore.
Ooh, okay.
So I'm gonna go the other way, and I'll talk about that. In a moment. I want to answer some questions. And I'm gonna get back to my plans for calibers and all that. But the downside of the Tikka, if you shoot a lot, is that replacing a barrel requires you to take it to a gunsmith. It's not a huge downside if you have a good gunsmith nearby. Finding a good gunsmith is not such an easy thing as it turns out.
Yeah.
Because Lord knows I've heard a lot of these idiot bloviate and they can't tell their ass from an elbow. But when you find a good one, they're good. They're good people. But in LA, I did not have good luck.
Yeah, that's a fact.
But it depends on where you live and if you know a good one. All right, let's look at some questions and I'll talk more about 8.6 grit more and stuff like that. Okay, Kevin. If you can afford it, no. It's never an overkill to get a really high-end scope, because once you get one, going back is tricky. I test a lot of scopes. I look at a lot of scopes and all that sort of stuff. But then I have my list of recommendations, fairly limited for a reason. People keep on asking, why my favorite fill in the blank scope is not on your list? Does it mean it's a bad scope? No, it's still pretty decent scope. A lot of good scopes. But if I have to pick one or two, There are not that many that routinely go on my list of recommendations and stay there. With a 5 to 25 or thereabouts, it's tangent, narrowly edging out Z-comp just because of the optics at long range. And Will and I were doing the test together. Z-comp is amazing. Looking through mirage far away, tangent had an edge, and I'm an optics nerd, right? Does it make me a better shot? No, it just means I have no excuse, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
If I was going a little smaller, I'd go Z-comp 4 to 20 by 50. Still the best scope of this type I've ever seen. That stupid thing is just remarkable for how small it is. So if you're looking to split time between the SCAR and R700, I'd go for that 4 to 20 Z-comp.
Yeah.
The tangent version of the smaller scope is a 3 to 15 by 50, which I also have and like a lot. But if you are aiming at precision, having 20x on the top end is very helpful. If you don't want to spend the money, there is the Element Nexus 5 to 20 by 50 for about $1,500. And honestly, if you are not doing Z-comp or tangent or Schmidt or one of those or March, I would basically skip everything in a $2,000 to $3,000 range. Although there are some nice ones, like there is this Leica PRS, which is very nice, and I would skip all of those and go down to $1,500, $1,800 range, where you have the Element Nexus, Delta Striker, Razor Gen 2, and all those. Because the stuff that's between tangent and those may be better. It's not that much better, right? If you're looking for something that's either go no compromise or stay in that $1,500 to $1,800 range, because the scopes that are there now are really competent. Okay. All right, Will, you want to add something to it?
Yeah, actually, it's funny that he kind of brings that up, because way back when I had a Schmidt Bender 5 to 20 ultra short. This was before Z-comp was even around. This was years ago, and I actually used to split time on that between. I would shift that from my SCAR 17 and 308 to I had a QD mount, and I'd swap it back and forth between that and my AI and my Desert Tech, and kind of play musical scopes with that one scope. And yeah, I mean, it's certainly doable, especially if you're going to go with a top end scope like that. I do agree, if you want to split time between a SCAR and some sort of Remington 700, I do think that the 4 to 20 kind of gives you the best of all around, because it's small enough that it's not going to throw off the balance of the SCAR, and it's good enough magnification wise and glass wise and everything else to still do well at extended ranges. I had a 4 to 20 Z-comp, and I shot at a national level competition out to 1,400 yards and didn't have a problem with first round impact. So, the 20 top end is more than enough magnification for something like that. So I like the 4 to 20. But in terms of your general question, there's no such thing as overkill. I always tell guys, man, honestly, spend as much as you can on a scope, because a scope can stay with you for years to come. It's not like a rifle where if you buy a budget rifle, eventually maybe you outgrow the rifle or some of the designs of the rifle, things like that. If you start with a top of the line scope, you can graduate that scope to your next rifle and so on and so forth all the way through, and it'll stay with you for a long time.
I agree. All right, moving on. Serge, yes. Upgrading, you can only polish a turd so much. If you really polish it really well, so it's shiny, has a mirror finish, it's still a turd that's been polished. You have to start with something that's going to be a good base. That's why we keep on talking about Tikka, we keep on talking about Remington footprint actions, and some of them are fairly expensive, but it's not ridiculous. If you're going to be upgrade something that is decent. Right?
Yeah.
And if you like tinkering with stuff, well, there's a path for you.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of, I would say, more budget custom actions too. So like, price point example, the action that I run is a $1,400 action, but it has some features that I paid extra for that aren't necessarily mandatory on a 700 pattern action. But you look at something like the Defiance Tenacity or the Arc Nucleus and stuff like that. Those are, or even the Bighorn Origin, those are like $800 actions, $800, $900 actions that are more than capable of competing with top tier actions.
The other day I saw like a $450 or $500 action of that ilk. It was a little bit like Defiance. What was it? I can't remember the name, but it was very serviceable.
Yeah,
and well-made machined.
I think there's a Mac Brothers action that's right around that price
maybe.
point.
But anyhow, you can get a $500 custom action. It's not going to have all the bells and whistles, but it's going to be machine straight.
Yeah, and I would definitely recommend those over a standard Remington 700. Anything.
Pretty much. Exactly. Okay. All right. How compared to Tika?
Ooh.
You want to do this one, or you want me to start cursing first?
I mean, I kind of stated everything that I had to say about Tika, and that's my personal recommendation between those two. I think for out of 10 Howas that for every 10 Howas that I see, I think 6 or 7 of them are pretty good, and there happens to be 3 of them that aren't so great in terms of inherent accuracy from the factory barrel wise and some quality control stuff like that. But go ahead.
All right. So let's come up with something good. It is better than Savage or Remington.
Yeah.
Savage used to be better. Now they've done something weird again. Maybe they'll get better. So Hawa is a perfectly decent action, but their barrels are really not awesome. And if you're going for something like this, the barrel should be good. The Tika stands out not because of the action so much. They are made straight and all that. Tika factory barrels are legitimately good.
Yeah.
Hawa factory barrels are not legitimately as good as Tika or should really be mentioned in the same sentence. Savage factory barrels are better than Hawa. Hawa action is better than the Savage, more consistent, right?
Yeah.
Savages are fairly crude guns, but their barrels are drilled straight. I mean, they get dirty fast, but they're drilled straight.
Yeah.
It's not terribly hard to make a simple action correctly, which makes it all the more remarkable that Remington can't do it. But it's not terribly difficult. But the barrel has to be done well and has to be screwed on straight. And of all the factory actions right now, Tika does it better than anyone else. Now, Hawa does a micro action and offers it as an action, and that's actually quite decent. You have still the same limitations with barrels, but they're okay. They're not bad, and you have a good chance of getting a good one. And as far as micro actions go, the Hawa and CZ are the only game in town, and I heartily recommend the Hawa, whatever, for those situations. But if you're going with a full size action, just get a Tika and be done with it, and don't roll the dice.
Okay? Yeah, I agree.
All right.
Oof. I see this question a lot. I see this question a lot. I can't go to a single match anywhere in the country without somebody asking me this question. Listen, man, I'm gonna be very honest. And I have a decent number of friends that are sponsored shooters by Criterion. And nothing personal against them. They're great guys and everything like that. But realistically, man, you get what you pay for. I'm not saying the Criterions can't shoot because somebody's going to come on here and say, oh, mine shoots, 0.3 all day. Yeah, that's fine. But you run the risk of, the way that I look at it is, okay, for every 10 prefits that they put out, how many of them are capable of that kind of accuracy? From what I've seen, the inconsistency is pretty bad. I mean, it's at best half of the ones that they put out that are going to be true shooters. And the problem is, if you don't get one, now you got to go and buy another blank, and you buy $200-300 blanks. Now you're at the cost of, a BART line, so.
Okay. All right. So that's more along the lines. So I have more experience with Criterion AR stuff. It's actually quite good. In that same price range, is there something you think is better? Or do you should just bite the bullet?
Man, so I've seen the Criterions, I've seen the Excaliburs. This is personal experience from the bolt gun precision rifle side of things, longer strings of fire and accuracy, at some pretty long ranges. I personally try to urge guys to just kind of bite the bullet and get a Bartline, a Hawk Hill, a Benchmark, a top quality blank. Even the proof stainless steel stuff is good too.
Proof stainless steel is, from the ones I've seen, are easily among the best.
Yeah, I mean, any of those top, to me, and I've shot pretty much all of the top ones: Hawk Hill, Benchmark, Bartline, Proof. I've shot them all in steel, and to me, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Brooks, Schneider. I mean,
yeah. Yep.
I had really good luck with high-end Lothar Walter barrels.
Yeah.
But they're good. They're legitimately good. I've had a really good luck with those cut barrels. Big name. Come on, work with me. Single point cut barrels. Krieger.
Yeah, I have a Krieger. That was my first custom 6.5 Creed, and I burnt it out, but till the last shot, man, it was still holding.
So my 38 Lapua, I think, was Krieger barrel. My 6.5 by 47 was the 6.5 by 47 Lapua, whatever, was that was a Lothar Walter. So when I got my load, I had a somewhat mild load with 130 grain burgers. When I was trying to finally figure out where exactly it's shooting, you may or may not have been there. I fired off 20 rounds at 100 yards into 0.8 of an inch.
Yeah, I mean,
in one long string, and then I packed up because I wasn't going to shoot better. But the barrel was capable of it, and I wasn't letting it cool off. I would just, I got situated. I had a couple of mags loaded, so I fired a string of 10 to 5-round magazines. I reloaded the mags and fired another string of 10 at the same exact point, and that yielded 0.8 of an inch. And that's a large barrel maker, button rifle, nothing fancy, but their high-end barrels are significantly good. Right?
Yeah.
And mine was not an exception. I mean, they're good barrels.
Yeah, all around. And then one last thing that I'll kind of throw onto that too is, with these prefits, you got to consider the quality of steel that they're using. 9 times out of 10, it's going to lead to a shorter barrel life than the comparable better steel in the same caliber. So, if you got like a Krieger or a Bartline 6.5 Creed, for precision accuracy for matches, you could get 2,500, 3,000 rounds out of it. Before you have to pull it for match use out of a Criterion, I'd guess you're looking at maybe 2,000. It's
if you're doing long strings of fire, they have some stress relief issues, so they basically become banana barrels eventually. If you're shooting slowly, you will get much higher round counts. They actually warp from heat.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that was a reply to Kevin. If you have a SCAR 20, don't sell it. Send it to me. I'll take it off your hands.
Yeah, same. Over here.
You live in California. You can only look at it and drool.
Listen, man, I'll do whatever it takes.
You'll never. So many of my friends are bailing out of California. You have no idea. Well, you'll be the last gun owner standing eventually.
Probably.
Yeah. All right. Savage Fool. We've got a Savage guy. Ramsey, I'm going to rename you into Ramsey Savage instead of Ramsey Country. Savage used to be a lot better than they are. They used to be crude but straight and everything, and their actions went to shit. I don't know what happened. Don't ask me.
Yeah.
Something, and now they got spun off again, so it might get better. I don't know. Something changed with Savages.
It's interesting, and I don't want to be that guy to say this, but so Savage is trying to kind of put their foot into the precision rifle market, right? And they have a Savage. They partnered up with MDT, and they have one in the ACC chassis that can kind of fit into the production class of precision rifle shooting. And I've got an older Savage in 7 Rem Mag that I use for hunting, and I got this, man, like probably it was given to me as a present years and years ago when Savage was still pretty decent, and it'll shoot factory ammo, half MOA at 100, so pretty good. But it's funny because some of the newer stuff, I hate to be the guy that says this, but so I know a couple of the sponsored Savage shooters in the PRS, and it's funny because they actually had to end up like gluing the action into the chassis to make the thing shoot straight because they couldn't get it right.
Yep.
And it's really unfortunate, man, because I do think that their barrels are inherently pretty decent, especially for the money. Because I'm always of the opinion when you buy a factory gun, you don't want to have to tinker with it right away. Otherwise, what's the point of buying a factory gun, right? You know, especially most of the time, the guys buying factory guns are newer to the sport, so they haven't quite figured out what they want and what they like and don't like and things like that. So to see something like that, it just kind of makes my heart hurt a little bit. Like, man, you have to do that much work right off the bat. So,
my first hunting rifle that I bought a while back was an old Tikka Model 695 into 80 Remington. I bought it for $500. When I realized it's holding nearly half MOA groups to the furthest we could put paper plates at Angels to 400, I said screw it and put it into a Macmillan stock.
Yeah.
And it was a cheap hunting rifle, but that thing is stupid accurate.
Yeah.
It happens, and you get those with Savages, and you get those with Remingtons and with Howas and all that. The question is, where do you get them most frequently, right? Where do you roll the dice? And right now, it is Tikka.
Absolutely.
It may not hold. It may change, right?
Yeah.
20 years ago, it used to be Savage. It's not anymore, not for what I've seen. I see a lot of guns.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, moving on. Good for you, Joe. I've been impressed with their consistency overall, but they make a ton of barrels and and they also OEM for a bunch of people. So half the time we have no idea where these go. So I really don't know.
Some of the AI barrels are Lothar Walther.
Yeah, nobody has ever complained about those.
No.
Okay.
Ooh. Oh, that's stirring the pot.
So there are a few companies out there where if you mention my name, so you will be sprayed with holy water and they'll point crosses at you and all sorts of stuff. Night Force, unfortunately, happens to be one of them. We had some major misunderstanding at some point, but they despise me because I have a very simple take on their products. The attackers are good. The beast is good. I don't believe the rest of them are worth it. I don't like the 2.5 to 20 and X8. I think it's a specman. I think that scope was an exercise in specmanship. It looks really good on paper. I saw one, I thought it was crap. I got my hands on a couple more. They all had the same problems. The 4 to 32 by 50 NX8 is somewhat decent. I still think it's overpriced, but it's decent. The 2.5 to 20, they beat off more than they could chew. There are problems with that scope. It's finicky. It's a little difficult to get behind. There is a fair amount of distortion. I don't like that design. Okay. If you have something to add, go for it, but I'm going to beat you over the head with it.
No, I mean, I kind of tend to agree, you know. So the thing that a lot of people the thing that a lot of people jump to is kind of like you said, that they see the spec sheet, right? It's short, it's compact, super wide magnification range, and they see the price point that's not, you know, over $3,000, and oh man, this thing's got to be awesome. And Night Force has probably the largest marketing budget besides maybe Loopold of any company I've seen in optics.
Larger than Loopold.
Okay,
Probably larger than Vortex, and Vortex sells a lot more scopes.
Yeah, and so the immediate thought is to equate, you know, any Night Force scope to attacker quality. And I've had, 7 to 10 attackers between the 7 to 35s and the 5 to 25s. And I think the 7 to 35 is a really well done scope in general. But again, I'm sure Ilya can explain this a lot better than I can, but when you realize the scope is that short and it's got that many, I guess, features on the spec sheet, you know, super wide magnification range, think about all the compromises, man. Like, you know, your parallax is going to be super finicky. The eye box is probably going to be really tight, especially at high magnification. I can only imagine how tight it is. Glass is probably not going to be great. Especially probably towards the top end. Maybe there's some sort of middle magnification that it's pretty good on, but it's one of those where 2.5 to 20 sounds really cool, but in this particular package is not exactly practical.
At this stage in the game, if you really want a wide magnification range scope, spend the money, get the March. There will still be compromises and all that, but they mitigate them better than other people. But there are still compromises, and it's still not for everything. In terms of optical quality, so Nightforce did something clever. The performance in the very center is very decent, but there is a lot of distortion, and it starts very close to the center. So if you just glance at it, it looks awesome, and then you get a headache, right? Because the sharpness is good, but because there is some weird distortion and stuff like that, it looks good at first, and then it fatigues you. One of the simplest tests of whether the optical system is well designed without knowing anything about optics, can you use it for a somewhat prolonged period of time without developing excessive fatigue? Right. This is one of the reasons why the high-end stuff is still different, because I can sit behind my tangent and just stare through it with one eye for quite a long time. Same with the Z-Comp, same with the Schmidt 5 to 25, almost the same with the Attacker 7 to 35, almost there, very close, easily a high-end scope, right? Mm-hmm. Not the case with the NX8. This is the reason why in that price range, $1,600, I talk about Element Nexus. It's a 5 to 20 by 50. Same rough price size range as an X8, a little bit cheaper. It's a much more forgiving scope to look through, right? I can use it for quite a long time without trying to claw my eyeballs out.
Yeah.
Okay, make sense? This is, people tend to get really hung up. Oh, it has ED glass, this kind of glass, this kind of. The simplest test with binoculars, rifle scopes, spotters. Get a comfortable position and look through it for an extended period of time. See what happens to your eyes. If in 45 seconds you got a headache, there are issues. You don't necessarily need to know what those issues are. If you really want to know, I'll tell you. But you don't need to know. You know there are issues. That's enough. Right?
Yeah.
So I don't have a ton of experience with them. They're primarily service type ARs. They're very accurate barrels. They have very good reputation. I don't like very heavy ARs, so it's not my cup of tea. So I'm not a competition shooter. But they make good stuff. I've never heard anything. It's a very specific stuff, but what they do make, they make well. Okay.
Yep.
Ooh. So yeah, I have some comparatively unpopular opinions on the subject. If you have something to say, go for it, and then I'll. Or if you want, I can go first.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just kind of. I mean, that's a very broad question, and I guess the first thing that I would say is I would ask you a question on what is the purpose of the rifle. I think that would determine so many answers to that. I mean, if it's I guess I'll take the competition approach, and then.
Since I've talked to Serge about this,
okay.
He started this. I can fill in a little bit of a background.
Okay.
He wants to buy a nice, accurate gun.
Okay.
He doesn't have access to very long ranges. 600 reasonably easily. I think 1,000 every once in a while.
Okay.
Okay. No competition just yet, but he likes nice stuff, good glass, and accurate guns.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's kind of the background.
Okay. So I mean, given that, I would say length and profile, it's gonna, I would say, be determined somewhat by caliber. So if it's something like a 6.5, you could get away with something a little bit shorter, maybe a 24-inch, 22-inch. Keep in mind that the shorter you go, the more velocity you lose. So at those longer distances, wind becomes a bigger factor. As well as just overall trajectory of the bullet. At some point you may end up hitting transonic depending on the caliber. Twist, I would go with whatever the common twist is for your specific caliber. So if it's like a 6.5, I would go like a 7.5 twist. That way you could shoot a bunch of different type of factory ammo. If you decide to hand load, you could go a little bit on the lighter side. You could shoot some of the heavier stuff. It's not a niche twist. barrel profile, I mean, honestly, if it's just a range gun, man, I don't see why you couldn't do something like a medium or heavy Palma, or even heavier if you only got to carry it from the car to the, to the bench. But if it's something that you're going to be actually walking around with, in the field, or, hunting or something like that, and it's not going to be a long string of fire like a competition, then, maybe a medium Palma that's like about a 4.5 pound barrel, if it's 26 inches. So, those are some of the things that are going to kind of determine it. I know Ilya tends to go a little on the shorter side, for
Yeah,
sure.
there is a reason for it. I'll explain in a moment.
Absolutely. But just consider the fact that also he knows the purpose of his rifles and what he's looking for. So I wouldn't say that there's one universal answer for it, because obviously my needs are a little bit different. Just quickly touching on my competition rig, it's a 26-inch barrel. It's a Bart line. It's a 6mm in a 1-7 twist, which is a very common twist for that caliber. And the profile is M24, so that's about a 6.25 pound barrel by itself. Because I want the weight, I want the length for the extra velocity. Because in competition shooting, velocity is a good thing, and I don't have to hump it, up and down hill and dale for half a mile or a couple miles in a day. So
Okay. He's wrong. No, he's not wrong. Don't go very long. There is a reason for it. So for the same thickness, a shorter barrel is stiffer and easier to make shoot better, and it will be more consistent with different ammo types. Okay. If you go too short, the gun gets obnoxiously loud, which I don't like it. I'm more sensitive to sound than to recoil. So for like 6.5 Creedmoor, I do 20, 308, 1920, something like that. For a bigger gun, you can go longer, but for the same thickness, a longer barrel is more whippy, for lack of a better term, and it may be less consistent with different ammo types. So the ammo selection is going to be a little bit trickier. If your barrel is not terribly long, you don't have to go very thick, but medium heavy. One of those is fine. And because it's not so long, handling is not going to be too bad. Twist straight is another one of those sort of controversial things. I've been looking at that a lot lately and talking to a lot of different gun makers and all that. I mean, I'm probably going to soon buy a barrel, get a barrel that's might be 1 in 3 twist or something like that. So fast twist straight was a problem with old bullets that were not as well balanced as modern stuff. Modern stuff is manufactured much better. There is very little downside right now to overspinning the bullets. But there is a significant upside. One is that you can use heavy for caliber bullets. And as Will keeps on pointing out, wind is a problem, trajectory not so much. And with a heavier bullet, wind is easier. Another, there's been a lot of good work by Brian Litz and a few others that overspun bullets, overstabilized bullets, do substantially better going through a transonic region, so you don't need to be worried about that quite as much. Okay, and if you have a hunt, there is an additional factor to rotational energy. The energy that the bullet dumps into a game, if you hunt, is a combination of kinetic energy due to velocity and rotational energy due to how fast it's spinning. So you will have better lethality with a faster spinning bullet if the bullet is designed right. So my take on it right now, given where I think this market is going, for most common calibers like Creedmoor and all, stick around 20-inch barrel, go as heavy as you can handle weight-wise, and go as fast of a twist as you can easily get. Shall we move on?
Sure.
All right, Ongo knew I was talking about Krieger. Thank you.
Yeah, good stuff.
ABC? What's ABC?
I don't know ABC.
Maybe ARC, American Rifle Company, maybe? I don't know. Okay. Joe, ask again. I'm not sure what you mean. Okay. All right. So for precision stuff, don't code it with anything. For other than competition rifles, if you want longevity and resistance, go nitride. Chrome is done well by very few people. Like FN does a good chrome barrel and all that. And even other than the cachet and the sound of a chrome barrel, nitride is basically the least invasive way of doing this. But it's still, you can introduce some thermal stress to the barrel. Some competition guns don't do it. The exotic stuff, no. Exotic claims, there isn't really any exotic stuff. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not terribly concerned about China invading California. I'm more concerned about Berkeley spilling out into the rest of California. Yeah, ask me how I know. Yeah, I did my undergrad at Caltech. I went to grad school at UCLA. California is an interesting place.
Yeah, fair. Very fair.
Okay, Ramsey doesn't know who you are, Will. So today he's my punching bag, but generally, no. So Will is a good friend. I've known Will for a few years here and there. He's a PRS competition shooter.
Mm-hmm.
So when I have competition-related things, I always run him by Will because he's not known for bullshitting.
Yeah, fair.
I always get an honest answer. I don't always like it, but it's always an honest answer. So I did this live cast because Serge asked me a question about choosing a precision rifle, and I can address it to a significant degree, but not so much from a competition standpoint. So I originally invited Will and another acquaintance of mine who runs a company that makes really high-end rifles, but he was in a path of the Hurricane Sally, so he had to evacuate. He's not available. I'll bring him on next time. I'll try to. And that's how Will ended up. That's how Will ended up here.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next. So so I'll take this one, Will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kind of up in my wheelhouse. Parallax is important. I have a video coming up that will show how parallax works, how it is different on different guns, and how it affects how you mount the scopes and all that. It'll probably take me 2-3 weeks. Kind of busy. Parallax is important for competition, and it really becomes important once you go up in magnification and once the distances change. For common shooting, hunting, and all that, people overdo it a little bit. And I don't like to putz with the parallax so much. One of the reasons I use tangentators so much because they have incredible, probably the most forgiving parallax of them all. For those compas up there, so is Schmidt. For the ultimate in accuracy and precision, you want a parallax, a well worked out parallax adjustment. For general purpose shooting, if your scope goes much above 12, 13 power, you probably want parallax, but it's not so much because of parallax itself, but because of depth of field, right? So you want to be able to adjust focus, so whatever you're looking at is not blurry. From parallax itself standpoint, it's not that critical, really. It's very overblown. Okay. Anything to add?
No, I think you hit it mostly nail on the head. I mean, just to kind of specifically answer the question, scopes with the best designed and functioning parallax adjustments. I think the two that kind of stand above the rest is Tangent and Z-Comp. Schmidt's pretty close. The Night Force 7-35, I think, has one of the widest in terms of it goes all the way down to 10 meters, I believe, but it's also kind of picky compared to those scopes. As a general scope, it's not too bad, but yeah, I mean, and like you said,
Minox is also up there.
Yeah, they are too. I always forget about the ZP5, but it's like a really underrated scope, just kind of under the radar.
Yeah, Minox shot themselves in the foot with some early quality problems, and this market is not forgiving.
Yeah, I had two of them, and I really wanted to like them.
They're very nice scopes, and now they've stabilized. Now they're good, but some early ones had issues. Okay. So Jared, basically, if you have a specific application in mind, bring it up, and I'll go over the parallax stuff again. But for general purpose shooting, it is somewhat overblown. You don't have to have parallax adjustment on everything. Okay. Israelis like tourists. So my wife is Israeli. I go to Israel a lot. Have family there. So a lot of the advantages of being an American tourist in Israel are totally wasted on me. But Will should definitely go. I would recommend May
Okay.
or September. And well, you may come back married, but yeah.
Well, listen, I've got it on the list after this whole Corona thing is over. I've got it on the list of places to go
You
because
should.
I'm
Let
itching.
me know. I'm there once, twice a year. I'm probably not going to introduce you to my sister-in-law just in case, but still.
Very fair. Very fair.
Yeah. No, so Israelis generally like Americans. Israelis can be abrasive. They live in a very difficult neighborhood, but it's a warm Mediterranean culture. It's a nice place to visit. If you are at all religious, if you like history at all, there is nothing like Israel. It is something. Ooh, this is a question for Will.
Uh-oh. Oh. Yeah, okay. So, I mean, PMags for ARs, I think, are well done. I mean, there's also a lot of choices out there, but for a bolt gun, you don't use PMags because they limit the internal length that you can load a bullet to. So that means that when you're chasing the lands, you can't load quite as long, or when you need to do seating depth, when you're hand loading, or even some factory ammo that's just loaded really long, it won't fit in a PMag, to be honest. So that's why we all use standard AICS steel mags. They have a really long internal length, and also specifically for the competition side of things, typically the steel mags feed smoother than the plastic mags. I'm not saying that you can't use P mags if that's what you got, by all means, but you'll get the smoothest experience. And you'll disturb the rifle the least when it's on some awkward prop where it's barely balanced with a steel mag that's really well fitted to the well timed to the action and the chassis and everything else you've used. But mostly it's for the internal length, to be honest.
Yep. So I use PMags on my fix, but once again, I made a conscious decision to try to stop reloading. If you're using factory ammo, there isn't really a downside to PMags. If you're reloading, trying to get the most out of your cartridge, you want something with more internal length.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is also for Will.
Oh, yeah. So I was fortunate enough to do a kind of extended review on one of these. They sent me a prototype and they let me beat it around.
Just because I can't leave this alone, why did they send you a prototype? Remind me.
Yeah. So Ilya was nice enough to introduce me to the guys over there at Tract at SHOT Show this past year, and they wanted to kind of break into the precision rifle game with a scope that kind of touched on all the features that precision rifle shooters specifically were looking for, because they had already come out with the 4-20, which was kind of a all-around scope, but they wanted something geared specifically towards precision rifle. So they said, hey, here, we'll send you a prototype. It was basically a final prototype, though, as far as I know. They didn't change anything from the actual production models, and they said, take it for, I think they gave it to me for like 3 months, and they said, beat it up and try to break it and run it in some matches and do everything you can to make sure that it works. And I was pretty impressed with it, to be honest, for the price point. I wasn't paid or anything like that. They purely just, I did it out of pure curiosity. And, I like to try new things all the time. And, my unbiased opinion is, honestly, I really like it for the price point that it came in at. Somebody recently told me that they're actually back ordered until December. So, I mean, that's pretty indicative of the reception that they've gotten in the community so far. There was a couple of things, like very minor things that I told them that I would change for a Gen 2 version, if, they eventually come out with one and things like that. But overall, it was really well done.
Yes. So I'd like to point out a couple of things. One is that that's what I get for introducing people. They sent him one, didn't send me one. All jokes aside, no, they'll send me one when I ask for it. I'm busy. I'm very friendly with the guys at Toric. They're good people. I like their stuff. This is a Toric's version of the same basic Light Optics Works design that's behind Athlon Chronos, Delta Striker, Trigicon, 10 Mile, Nifia. They all have slightly different variances. I haven't tested the Toric. I like the Striker more than the other ones, but they're all really clearly related. It's an incredibly successful design by Light Optics Works, and that is the. I remember a little bit earlier I said, if you're not going very high end, drop down to this $1,800 range. Well, this is one of the scopes there. It is really nipping at the heels of the $2,500, $2,600, $2,700 stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's still a difference, but it ain't that much. I think Toric, Striker, that range, I think that is the sweet spot right now, what you get for the money. Once you get above that, there are diminishing returns. Now, there are still returns and they're still notable. But, think carefully whether you really need it.
Mm-hmm.
All this $1,700, $1,800 stuff is getting really good, really, really competent. And Toric is one of those, one of the indications.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, MDT, I think you mean. They're good. They're good. They're competent. There's nothing wrong with them. Some a little better than others. I've used the LSS. I think you have one of the high-end ones.
Yeah, I have the ACC, which is their purpose-built competition chassis.
Yeah, it is quite competent. They make nice stuff. I haven't had any issues. Quality control. I mean, they're big, cool, but the quality control did not seem to suffer as they got bigger. So I like that company. They do good stuff.
Yeah, very good stuff.
Okay, Joe helped answer the question.
Yeah.
And he likes ARC.
Okay.
I had a weird experience with American Rifle Company. Ted doesn't like me. But I don't have any experience with their chassis or actions. I kind of question the rings. Everybody loves them, and I'm not terribly impressed. Just from a design standpoint, the hinge is not a good idea. If everything, it's asking for bad tolerance stack up, and I've seen a few.
Interesting.
But on a high-end gun, on the high-end stuff, it works well. But otherwise, those two hinges on arc rings, they're very easy to take apart because single large screw and all that sort of stuff. But to get hinges to work, you have to build in just a little bit of slop. And the way the bottom is machined, if you're not matching perfectly the scope, you will crush something you don't want to crush. The action looks reasonable, but I don't have a ton of experience with it.
Yeah.
Okay, so please address this while I collect my composure, and then I'm going to have a few words.
If you need to take a 10-minute break, woosah, breathe in, breathe out, deep breaths. Yeah. Okay, listen, I don't ever want to be that guy to put down other people that are, that have a name or trying to make a name or grow themselves in this industry and things like that. But, guys, man, listen, I don't know Rex on a personal level. I'm sure he's a great guy. I'm sure he's a nice guy. But the stuff that he's putting out is very misinformed, uninformed, even to the point of misleading, to be honest. So this particular statement right here is very misleading because that is not an inherent truth of anything, really. It's not some sort of general rule from what I've seen at all. So,
all right. So I can breathe now?
Yeah. I would just say, take what he says with a grain of salt, man.
No pound of salt, maybe a couple. They don't know him personally, never met the guy. As far as don't know how good of a shot he is, he may very well be. I've seen his optics videos. The dude can't tell his ass from an elbow.
Yeah,
okay,
it's painful.
He can, I don't know what to tell you. He has no idea what he's talking about. He's bought and sold by IOR. Val pays him. That's how he gets all the good reviews. He says occasionally he says good things about a good scope, but it seems to be purely random. He has no idea what's happening inside. This particular statement is certified bullshit. He has a huge following because he was the first of the type of this kind of a reviewer type thing on YouTube, one of the first. So he was at the right place in the right time, and he has an English accent. That's pretty much it. Aside from that, he's an incompetent schmuck. All right, makes my blood pressure. Well, you have no idea how many times I hear, "Oh, but the T-Rex said."
Yeah.
And,
It's unfortunate.
I'm an arrogant jackass, right? I know what I am, but I do this for a living. This is my life, right? I am a legitimate optics guy. I do this because I happen to be very fortunate. My hobbies coincide with my education, what I do for a living.
Yep.
At least, and there are a lot of reviewers out there. They're not optics people, and they put out perfectly legitimate reviews because, like Slev Gans, who I've had here a while back, and there are a few others here and there. They kind of know what they know. They approach this optics from their angle, and they say the right things. Will did the review of the Toric. It was a perfectly legitimate review, because you are not getting into the things you do not understand, and the things you do understand have a lot of value. It's a different type of thing. T-Rex gets into shit he has no conception of, right? It sounds sophisticated with a British accent. It's basically it.
Yeah, it's and another thing that I'll kind of add to that is, so guys, I'll give him this much. He did a really genius thing in the way that he marketed his videos, calling everything part of the Sniper 101 series, because that's probably got to be the most common used search term in YouTube when you want to look up long range shooting is sniper. Long range sniper shooting and all this other stuff. So, he gets all the hits and all the clicks. And I guess from a marketing standpoint, he just happened to, hit a golden nugget right there, titling everything sniper this and sniper that. Has the man ever been a sniper in his life? Absolutely not. Again, I'm sure he's maybe a nice guy. Never met the man personally, but, kind of what Ilya said, at least for me. So I shoot competition. I shoot a lot of competition, and I've been fortunate enough to be very successful in that realm, with a few wins under my belt and things like that. But I don't touch on things that I don't know enough about, right? If I don't know enough, I'm going to ask Ilya, or I'm just going to kind of leave it alone. So like he said, when I did, my review on the Toric, I did it purely from a competition standpoint because that's where my field of expertise is. So I can tell you, okay, this is what competition shooters want and need and what they're looking for. And this either has it or it doesn't, type of thing. That guy he kind of gets into everything without knowing anything. And it's really,
we know people who are the real deal. Kalen and the Frank Galli of Sniper's Hut. He's a USMC scout sniper. I don't always get along with Frank. I have a ton of respect for the guy. He is the real deal.
Yeah,
and we
absolutely.
know enough of these people. And T-Rex is not it. He's just not it. Okay?
It's just frustrating.
It's all the people who actually do this dislike the dude immensely because he says stupid shit, and then I have to explain it again and again and again and again.
Yeah.
If he said stupid shit in a vacuum, I wouldn't care less.
Yeah.
He sends it in the ether, and then I end up having to dispel it again.
Yeah.
And again.
Yeah.
And again. And he just sounds convincing. He's like a world-class snake oil salesman. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Whew. I got that off my chest.
Yeah, sounds good.
Anyhow, but that having been said, if he comes up with some other stupid shit that you want to check anytime, I genuinely don't mind. I'm just perturbed that he keeps saying it.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, guys, please check the facts. Fact check before you just go and take it as, as gospel.
Yep. All right. It's a good scope. Have you had hands-on with it, Will, or?
So I've seen a couple of them at some matches, not as widespread, as some of the other common scopes out there. I think generally it's a good scope. Personally, would I spend the money on one? Probably not. Regardless of how much I had to spend, I'd probably either go to the next tier up or take a step down, or even in that same kind of price range, I think there's just some better options. But I don't think it's a bad scope.
Okay. So it is a very decent scope. The first batch had CA, then they fixed it. My biggest problem with M7XI is the reticle selection. MSR2 is good, but all the 3 reticles are various Horus designs, and it's just not my thing. The turrets mechanics are very good. Optics got better. If I were looking at the M7XI, I would get the IFS version with the integrated ballistic computer.
That's
I
a fun
played
one.
with one for a bit. They did it, of all the ones I've seen to date, I think they have the best implementation.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the Revit that we also spent some time with. I think Steiner is more expensive, but I think Steiner did it better.
Yeah, I have a Revit, and I ran it as well.
Yep. Max, good evening, sir. Okay, good, Joe. I don't know anything about these guys, Joe.
I don't either, to be honest. I'm unfamiliar, so I don't want to pull a Rex and start blabbing on about something that I don't really know about, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's definitely something I'll look into. 6mm.
I can do my Rex impersonation. I'm gonna focus. I'm gonna rub my forehead like I'm about to fart. That's the typical Rex look. No, I've never heard about these guys. I'm not a bench rest guy, but if they're popular in the bench rest world, it's got to be a good barrel. I mean, bench rest guys are unforgiving.
Yeah,
absolutely unforgiving.
Yeah, they are probably the most anal retentive group shooters I've ever seen in my entire life.
And given present company, that's saying something.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got OCD coming out of the wazoo, and you pretty much have to be a competition shooter. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yes, sometimes, but I don't use bubble levels too much. I don't mind them there if they are unobtrusive, but there is a very limited utility to them, and it's something of a. It is something of a. It's an eye thing, right? So if your scope is set up correctly, your eye focus is going to be as if you're looking at infinity, right? Regardless of where the scope is looking, up close, far, and because that's the most relaxed position for your eye. If there is a bubble level mounted on a mount or on a scope somewhere there, it's very close to you. For you to be able to see it, you have to either shift your position or close your shooting eye, open your non-shooting eye, and focus on something close. One way or the other, you are disturbing your shooting setup. Okay. I like bubble levels when I'm doing all the setup and all that, but I don't use them beyond that. I don't even like to look at turrets. I like to go by feel. Once I'm set up behind the gun, I want to be looking through the scope and not looking at anything else, anywhere else. Okay. Thoughts?
Yeah. So I'll kind of just touch on it from a competition aspect. You'll see a lot of guys run bubble levels on their rifles and then forget to use them, or just honestly forget that they're even on there. I don't personally run an external one. I run a spur mount, and it's got one built in. And kind of what you talked about. So let's say that I'm shooting a long range stage that's 1,200 yards. Obviously, that far away, rifle can't becomes a bigger factor, but once I lay down in the prone or get into the position that I need to, I make sure that the rifle is straight. And typically, I'll be able to tell just my eyesight looking at the reticle. If it's that far off, I can tell by looking at my reticle. Other than that, I mean, I think Frank Galley had a good post on Sniper's Hide where he said your eye is almost like an internal bubble level, right? Like if it's that far canted.
Not almost like it is. That's how our perception works.
Right? Okay, so there you go.
I'll do a video on reticle designs and a couple other things. There are some interesting things that evolutionary came out because our eyes are horizontally spaced like this. We sense things in a very interesting way. I'll give you an example. If you got a scope from the factory and it happens to have a canted reticle, if it's more than a degree cant, you will see it. Well, yeah. I will. Right. If you're new at this, maybe a couple of degrees. Sometimes pull out your calculator and figure out what kind of a bullet displacement at 1,000 yards you get with, let's say, 6.5 Creedmoor, if you have a 2-degree rifle cant. And you can easily tell 2 degrees.
Okay? Yeah.
It's nothing. So it's not terribly not terribly critical.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just, at least for me, I use it for the initial setup to make sure that my rifle is straight when I'm laying in the prone or whatever it is. And then after that, I'm good to go.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. I use odd mounts that also have built-in levels.
Yep.
Now, level inside the scope can be useful, but it also can be distracting, so it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Okay. Heavy is good. Heavy is reliable. If it does not work, you can always hit them with it. So that is true. So I don't know how well this comes through the video. I weigh almost 300 pounds, and I'm sort of hit people on a semi-professional basis. I can do this well enough without the scope. I don't have to have a heavy-ass scope. No, I'm a Thai boxer, so I'm not comparatively concerned about hitting people with the rifle scope. Heavy does not mean good. Heavy does not mean reliable. For example, here's a March 1.5 to 15 by 42. It ain't heavy, and that's a good thing. And it's absolutely world class. Absolutely world class. A wonderful scope. The only one in the US, just for the record. Not that I'm showing off or anything. This was for Slav Guns. He keeps saying that I'm a show off, so since he's on here watching.
Yeah, I'd say that only that last part is true. If it's heavy, well, I guess you could throw it at him or hit him with it. But yeah, I guess it just kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier, where the first two are not a general rule that's, you know, accepted all over. Another example that I just want to give is that Vortex AMG, you know, for the features and this type of scope that it is, it's pretty light, but it's really well done. It's good and reliable. So I wouldn't say that that's a universal rule.
Slav Guns. Everybody likes scamming tourists. It's not an Israeli pastime. It's that's how Americans support the economy.
Fair.
Everywhere in the world. I've shot it once, I think. I have vague recollection. It was a very respectable gun, but I don't have a ton of experience with it. Well,
yeah, I don't have any experience with that particular rifle, unfortunately. I'm in California, man. A lot of the semi-auto questions, it's tough. We don't get all the cool toys.
Hey, I didn't want to have to make fun of you. You did it yourself.
Yeah, man. So, okay, I'll tell you this much. So, yes, we do care about weight. The most important thing is you want your rifle to be balanced, because we shoot in such awkward positions. So like my setup, for example, weighs about 23.5 pounds. It's not that I chose 23.5 pounds specifically for my rifle to weigh that number. It's just that that's the number that it came in once I slapped everything on it with my barrel profile and my scope and you know, everything else together, that's what I needed to get the weight right in front of the mag well. So basically, I'm not going to show the rifle, but if this is my magazine, I want to be able to rest my magazine up against the barricade, and I just leave my rifle sitting there. And I'll back away from a barricade, and I'll leave it there, and it's not going to teeter forward or backwards. It's going to sit perfectly level. So all I have to do is get behind it, close the bolt, nice, easy squeeze on the trigger. Usually, most shooters are right around that 20 to 22 pound mark on a precision rifle. 16 and under, you're on the light side, and depending on what caliber, can make it really hard to spot your own shots, not necessarily from the prone, but from obstacles. That's the tough part. Rooftops, barricades, tank traps, chains, tow straps, like all those really awkward positions is where the balance and the weight makes a difference. Actually, I was having this exact conversation with, again, my buddy Phil, and the last match that we shot together, he was running a 6.5 Creed, and you know, he was saying, I asked him, I was like, hey man, listen, what rifle weight do you think a shooter shooting a 6.5 Creed with 140 grain ELDMs would need? And he said, honestly, man, I'd need like a 22 pound rifle. You know, if I was under 20 pounds, positional, I wouldn't be able to spot my own shots. And that's coming from a guy that's been exponentially more successful in the sport that I have. So it's it's a balance and weight combination thing. It's not just slap the heaviest thing on there. Because I've personally ran a 25-pound gun in a match. I ran it in one match and I hated it. It was too heavy. It was too cumbersome. And the rifle was so front heavy that on every obstacle, I was fighting forward pressure. So now I got to not only hold the reticle still on target off this barricade, but I also have to deal with the teetering, which is not cool.
So, Will, you need to come visit me in New Mexico for a month. A month on my diet, you'll have no problem counterbalancing any gun made.
Yeah, very fair, very fair. You know, Jacob Bynum down at Rifles Only says, if that rifle's too heavy, get a gym membership, man. So yeah, I mean, specifically for competition, we want low recoil, heavy rifles. And fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, that's just kind of the way that the game is going. And if you truly want to be competitive, then, you know, if it is a little tough to wield around a 22-pound gun, man, to be honest, if you really want to be competitive, I gotta agree with Jacob, man. Hit the gym a little bit, you know.
So to be clear, my love of light rifles is primarily because I'm lazy. So that's basically it, right?
Yeah. Very fair.
I don't have too many issues with heavier guns, but I'm not a competition shooter, right?
Yeah,
In
I
general,
think they're very
gun versus competition gun, to very, very different things.
Yeah, absolutely. Trust me, every time I go hunting and I get to pick up that, you know, 10-pound rifle, I'm like, oh man, I wish I could shoot this in matches. But, you know, then, you know, I go to a match and I see a guy that shows up with a, you know, 14-pound 6.5 Creed and he's getting knocked all over the place in those awkward positions. And then, you know, it's just the precision rifle sport is such a niche in terms of rifle requirement that, you know, when I first started precision rifle shooting, I wanted a do-it-all rifle, right? I wanted a rifle that I could take out hunting and then still do well in matches in. And I spent so much money trying to find that perfect balance until I spent so much money, I realized that perfect balance doesn't exist. Now you can take your 14-pound, that's a heavy hunting rifle. You can take it to a precision rifle match just to have fun. And that's totally fine. I get it. And I appreciate that. But if you truly want to be competitive at that top level, you just can't be with a rifle that light.
I'll go on record for this. If you have the funds, if you want a general purpose gun that will do everything other than competition, it will be accurate and you can shoot long range with, etc. You just cannot do competition. Get the Fix by Q.
Yeah.
Still probably the best compromise because it's lightweight. You can and I can weigh it down a little bit and all that, but it is not it's not a competition rifle.
Right.
And they did design it to be a competition rifle, right? But it does everything else well. Competition rifle kind of has to be separate.
Yeah, definitely.
I've seen a couple of his videos. He seems like a good dude. I had one brief interaction with him. I don't know if you know him, Will, or not.
Yeah.
He seems to be a very competent shooter. He's not an optics guy. I don't like it when he starts getting into the optical stuff that he doesn't fully. Here's the catch, right? So a lot of these optics things, and you know, correct me if I'm wrong, Will. Your take on this is a little different, maybe. Optics, practical optics, is not terribly complicated, but it is different. And a lot of the common sense you get from the other things you do when your regular life, they're not hugely applicable to the optics world. You kind of have to approach it with an open mind, and there are some things to learn. But it's different, but it's not terribly difficult. Most really good shooters who talk about rifle scopes, they take an approach that their expertise transfers, and it really doesn't.
Yeah.
I think that's basically that.
Yeah. And just to, I guess, kind of bring another side comment into that. So yeah, I've seen his YouTube videos as well. You know, I'm always watching scope reviews from other guys and stuff like that too, just to hear different takes and maybe something I missed, something I didn't, stuff like that. I think there's a big misconception, fortunately or unfortunately, with some of these different manufacturers that equate a good shooter to a knowledgeable, I guess in this specific case, optics guy. you know, I've seen good shooters approached by optics companies to do reviews and stuff like that. That I've seen it on both hands. They'll say no, because to be honest, I don't know enough details about rifle scopes. I just know what I personally like, and that's it. And then I've seen other guys say, yeah, you know, bring it on. And then you end up with some of the videos that we see that just, they don't make sense.
Welcome to my blood pressure problems. Okay. But that's the thing. I don't like to badmouth people, T-Rex being the exception because he's just a jackass. Richard seems like a good dude, but he gets into the subjects he's not comfortable with, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, it looks that way in the videos in some of them, where if you know enough, then you'll just kind of look at it and you'll just kind of cringe and just like, oh man, this is getting harder and harder to watch. You're just digging yourself a deeper hole here, buddy.
I remember a video where he was equating warm color in a scope with high quality, right?
Yeah, that's tough.
It's like there are little cues that I see. Once again, I mean, I see them before because this is what I do for a living, right? My day job will make optical test equipment to characterize all this stuff, right? And if you, so I see all this thing and I'm like, oh shit, that's just not true, right? And it may be an innocent mistake, but it's just not true.
Yeah.
Thanks, sir. I hope you're right. I'm having a blast doing this, I gotta say.
Yeah, we all hope so.
Yeah. I'm gonna give you a visual that will keep you all guys awake at night, scared and disturbed. So many years ago, we went to the Dead Sea. And remember, my wife is Israeli, and she turns out she's never had a Dead Sea mud treatment, although she's Israeli. So she convinces me to go do this stupid thing. Everybody goes buys this like jug of mud for $5, slathers them on themselves, go wash it off in the Dead Sea, and call it good. No, we paid a ton of money to some Moroccan woman to cover us in this weird ass stinky mud and wrap us in this plastic for like 20 minutes. And I'm claustrophobic.
Okay.
Okay, so I finally claw my way out of this stupid thing that makes me look like a muddy mummy, like in the Egyptian things. Here's the visual you will try to unsee. Imagine a 300-pound, fat, hairy, really pissed off Russian guy ambling his way over toward the Dead Sea to wash all that crap off, looking to all the world like a Yeti on steroids, right? Oh, so it was such a miserable thing. I'll tell you. But yeah, that's one of the tourist traps. So they do a bunch of cosmetics and stuff out of those Dead Sea minerals and all that, but mud is just mud.
All right, fair, very fair.
So depending on who invites you there, Will, I do not recommend it.
Okay, all right. Noted.
Okay. So Delta Striker, there are a few people in the US beginning to carry them. Edgon West is probably the most common right now, but they'll probably have more retailers soon. There are a couple more. I don't remember the name. I'll pull it up. I have a community board on my YouTube page, or I have a website, darklordofoptics.com. Shoot me an email or a message, and I'll pull up and tell you who sells them. I don't remember offhand. Okay. Fat Rex? I didn't know he was fat. I thought I was the only fat optics reviewer. More competition again. I'm not familiar with that channel, so I don't know these guys.
Yeah, so that's Piet. His YouTube channel used to be called Piet Skiet. He's based in South Africa, and I actually met him in person for the first time at this past SHOT Show when I was with Travis from the NRL and stuff like that. And he kind of heads the NRL down there in South Africa. He does a lot more of the precision rifle stuff, but generally everything that I've seen on his channel, and I do know him. He's a good guy, and yes, I definitely recommend his channel. Obviously he's a sponsored shooter, so he speaks a little bit more about those particular products, but you know, he's a good guy, and he doesn't talk about stuff he has no experience in. And if you're looking for a precision rifle channel, he does tend to stick more towards the precision rifle stuff, and he's a pretty accomplished shooter too. So good channel for sure.
Okay, good. I'll need to check him out. Yeah, they're working on it. I hope they will be. They're a good brand. So I'm friendly with the company owner. I met him at SHOT Show. He seems like a good dude. I designed a couple of reticles for them. They support the product well. They want to get into the US, but they are kind of careful. So they're not going to jump in until they can really support it. I think they will be. So, Will, you want to talk about suppressors?
Listen, man, the only thing I can say is that every time I go and shoot a match, and then I get to go up to the prize table and pick my prize, and I see all these free Thunder Beast certificates, I pray and wish that I could pick one of these up, because I would love to have a free Thunder Beast. I'd love to have a free any suppressor, but especially a Thunder Beast. That's about the extent.
Next time you have a chance, pick one up for me. We'll work out a deal. So I have a couple of suppressors. I'm buying a couple more. I'm not a huge authority on them. From what I've seen, the suppressors by Q are quite good. Dead Air seems to have a good reputation. Although the guys from Q claim that Dead Air mostly copying them. Maybe, I wouldn't know. But most suppressors right now are getting better. What is still harder is to have a really good lightweight suppressor that always doesn't keeps your gun accurate and manages recoil reasonably well. Thunder Beast, Q, Dead Air, a couple others are all up there. I just ordered Q's Jumbo Shrimps from Silencer Shop. So if you come visit, I'll let you look at it, but won't let you shoot it.
Oh man, you're killing me.
That's what I'm here for. Jared, I'm working on it. I'm sorry, man. I know it's taking a while. I'm slammed with all this stuff. I've got some ideas, and I'm also working. So I'm starting a company to do red dot mounts and stuff, and one of them is going to be for AKs. I think I have a better mousetrap. So I'll be talking more about that, but it will take me a little time. I don't like to talk out of my ass. So I have 2 AKs set up differently, and I'm doing some tests, kind of finalizing my thoughts. Okay. Remember the whole business, don't talk about things you don't understand. I have a lot more experience with ARs and AKs, and I'm shooting a lot of AKs right now. I went and took a class with an AK, did a couple other things. Every gun system is a little bit different, and I set up optics on ARs and AKs differently. And there is a reason for it. I'll go over all of that. Yes and no. There's a lot of skill. We can do it. We can go to a PRS competition where I'll shoot Will's gun and he'll shoot a Savage 308 and he'll probably beat me. It's not just an equipment race.
Yeah. I honestly, man, like I gotta blatantly disagree with that statement. There's a big misconception that it is, because what ends up happening is a lot of the mid-pack shooters, a lot of the mid-tier shooters think that they could buy their way to the top end, to the top 10, top 20, but you can't. Like me, for example, I shoot my rifle and I show up to every match with one bag, and it's an Armageddon Gear Game Changer, and then I have my Really Right Stuff tripod, and my ammo, and that's pretty much it. I don't have 18 different bags for every stage, whatever. And I've been fortunate enough to win a few matches like that, and I shoot every match like that. And once you get to that top end, when you're shooting, like at the championship match, when I'm shooting with the top guys in the country, John Pinch, Jake Vibert, Phil Vallejo, Nick Godarzi, all these guys that I've shot with multiple times, you'll see them with the exact same setup. They've got the same rifle they've been using all season. They've got one bag, and then that's pretty much it. And they'll clean every stage. Because when you get to that top level, honestly, the biggest separating factor between everybody at the top level is your wind reading. If your wind reading is on that day and your wind calls are on, that's going to be the biggest separator, because we all know how to build solid positions with minimal equipment. Because the more equipment you bring to a stage, the more time that gets taken up on that stage. And remember, we only have a minute and a half or 2 minutes to build a position and get 10 or 12 or 15 shots off. So that's where that misconception comes in, is the mid-tier and lower tier guys want to buy their way to points, but you can't do that. You got to put in the time, you got to put in the practice. And I see that with new shooters all the time at the local matches that I shoot. They'll say, oh man, I wish I could afford to be a top end shooter. Really, the only thing you need to afford is the ammo. I don't ever want to be that guy to put down other people, but I promise you that I could take a factory Tika TAC A1 and give me an Armageddon gear game changer, and I could shoot an entire match that way, and then give a new shooter my rifle setup, and I promise you I'd still win.
Doesn't have to be a new shooter. I'm not a good shot, but I'm a competent shot, and you will beat me with a standard gun. Because I'm not. No, seriously. I've seen you shoot. I don't suffer from any modesty, false or otherwise. Trust me. But it's not. There is the skill level difference is. The skill level difference is significant, and for all the top guys that Will is mentioning, they can all swap around and take each other's rifles, and after a week they will shoot the same, and they all shoot different guns.
Yeah, very fair.
It's just not going to change. I'll give you an example from a different sport. So, one of the things I do is I play tournament table tennis, believe it or not. And compared to people who don't play, I'm a god of table tennis. I've trained, I've played a ton of tournaments, I'm competent. Compared to the people who are at the top level in the US, for them playing me or playing Will makes no difference. To the guys who are top 10 in the world, playing me or playing Will, or top 5 guy in the US makes no difference. Might as well be on another planet. And it's just skill level. Skill matters. Really, really skill matters.
Yeah, fair.
Okay. So I assume you mean stuff like with a little circle in the center and stuff. Yeah, it's not the greatest idea. I don't think it's the way of the future. There'll be some minority of shooters who prefer this. But there'll be some who like a floating dot, some will want to shoot with an open circle, and some who will want a crosshair. I can use all three in reasonable comfort, but there is no one thing that's the wave of the future. There is enough variance in human perception. Human perception, people don't understand how complicated human perception is. I'll show you. This is in my desk at all times. This is, it's probably like a first-year grad level book, maybe last year undergrad book. It's a guy from MIT who's kind of wrote the thing. And that just scratches the surface. And how we perceive and how we aim varies substantially. Our visual cortex, our vision system, in many ways evolved because of aiming, right? We are aiming animals in many ways. But aiming with a reticle is not natural, so we'll all translate, and everybody's brain will do this a little bit differently. Okay. But these kind of physiological differences in vision will dictate which reticle appeals to you the most. Comments?
Yeah, I mean, I've shot with all of them. I guess probably the most common open center was the Razor Gen 2 with that EBR2C reticle that had the little open center. Yeah, I shot that for a while, and I didn't mind it. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's, for me, I think it's kind of a personal preference thing to some extent. Although the large majority of scopes that I see now are going towards a floating dot in the center, and the size varies depending on what reticle and scope company you're looking at.
Yeah, Alex. And once again, if you're a competent shot and you know what you're doing, you can shoot with almost all of them, right? So keep that in mind. Okay. Yeah, they all do. I make fun of them regularly. Okay, more. So I don't know enough about suppressors at this stage. I'm gaining some more expertise. Ask me in a year. I've got, I think, 4 suppressors going through. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, decibel renting, decibel reduction depends on how you measure. Cans is completely separate can of worms. So. Okay, I'll switch into Russian for a moment. Я сделаю еще несколько видео на русском. Если честно, у меня просто не хватает времени. Но спасибо, я что-нибудь запишу. Если вас интересует определенная тема, поставьте в комментариях. У меня целый список, я добавлю. Yes, you need skills and equipment to beat other top guys.
Yeah.
You need very little equipment to beat people who are mid-pack.
Yeah, definitely. And the only thing I'll add to that is once you truly reach the top levels, typically you've already spent so much money in the sport that you either already have all the top equipment or you've got enough sponsors that you get top equipment for a pretty decent discount. So, you know, kind of by that point.
Yeah, so the more is that. So Max is a USPSA shooter, I think. Yeah, kinda. I mean, it varies, but yeah, you're right. Ooh.
Wow. That's a loaded question there, buddy. Oh boy. Okay, so I'll just kind of give my 2 cents real quick.
And then hide under the desk.
So I've had the Tremor 3 in several different scopes. The longest was probably my 7-35 attacker, which I had 3 of them in because when those scopes first came out, that was the only tree reticle available because they only had the Mil R, the Mil C, and then the Tremor 3. They didn't have the H59 or the Mil XT yet. So I tried 3 different times to really like that reticle, and all 3 times there's just too much shit, at least from a competition perspective. Now, I can't speak on the specific nature of the intended audience of that reticle or not, because
I can.
But what I can say is, okay, the win dots in a competition setting, no one actually calls their win like that. It's not a thing. And number 2, because of the calibers that are more common nowadays, those win dots are going to be all sorts of funky instead of like the, I guess, clean, what is it, 5 miles an hour it's supposed to be or whatever. And then the mover things at the top in competition, the mover speeds, man, they usually don't line up with the mover brackets on that reticle, so those are also useless and extra clutter. So you got a lot of like clutter going on when there's a lot of simpler reticles that accomplish the same basic thing.
You done?
Yeah.
So Arif, how good is if you have any grasp of Russian? Russian is a very expressive language. There's a whole different cursive vocabulary that I can use to describe this reticle much more effectively. I'll assume you don't speak Russian. It's not a Russian name. So the fundamental point of reticle design, right? And keep in mind, I spend a lot of time thinking about this. I design reticles for a bunch of people. There are quite a few of mine out there. In general, my reticles do all right. The reticle has to accomplish its purpose with the least amount of crap in front of your eye, because all of that your brain has to process. Okay, everything your eye sees, your brain has to process, right? The core requirements for a good precision reticle is to give you the required holes, have a nicely well-defined primary aiming point for when you dial, and have reasonable horizontal symmetry, because otherwise you will start losing balance. Quite literally, you will start tilting if you don't have horizontal symmetry. That's how our brain works. Okay, and a Tremor 3 happens to fail in all those counts. Okay, and that's just basic That's a basic fundamental problem. Wind dots don't work. This whole grid is very fine and extends very, very far down. When's the last time you needed 30 milliradian of holdover in your reticle tree? I mean, it has a ton of things that don't work, and they aren't there to distract you. If you've been shooting for any length of time when you're already a little bit fatigued, it all blurs. You lose your focus. And then the fact that there isn't a well-defined primary aiming point, that fact comes in, and now you're totally screwed. They sold it to the US military. The guy who convinced the military to use it is a really good snake oil salesman. And if you're a competent shot, you can use it. It's fine. But it is just not a terribly good. It's just not a terribly good way to go. Right. I'll stick it with that. What's happening, Will? I think his headphones are out. He can't hear me. So I'll move on to the next one. No, rimfire doesn't mean less features. Rimfire scopes without parallax adjustment usually have parallax set close at 50 to 70 yards, something like that. And otherwise, historically, some rimfire scopes were not designed to handle recoil, but that's mostly a thing of the past. Nowadays, it's mostly scopes that either have fixed parallax at around 50 yards or have adjustable parallax that focuses quite close. But otherwise, it's mostly just these days it's just a marketing scheme, really. Okay, Will, you back with us?
Yep. Yeah. Sorry, I just had to plug in my laptop charger.
No worries. You have staying power, man. Usually people wilt and die much sooner. Next question is for you.
Oh boy. So luck, man, yes and no. I mean, yeah, of course, there's always going to be wind gusts and things like that. But to be honest, like, if once you get to kind of the top level, wind reading, like I said, is the big separator between, you know, first, second, third, and pretty much everybody down the line. You have to be basically good enough to read wind on a shot per shot basis. So, like, for example, if I'm out there and I'm shooting off a barricade, and my target is, you know, 500 yards, I'm not only watching what the wind is doing at the target, but I'm watching my trace through the scope, right? So I'm watching the bullet, and you can actually start to see this thing kind of come in and be able to call wind off of that. Obviously, the further the distance, the easier it is. So, you know, 1,000-yard prone, you can basically have an idea, because what happens is there are some targets that are maybe set up on the crest of a hill, or, you know, there's mud around it, basically things that eat up the bullet splash. So you have no idea where it went. So if you can't see the trace, you have no idea if you missed left, right, up, down, nothing. And obviously you don't get any help from any spotters or anything like that. So yes, luck is a little bit of a factor. Maybe you just lay down at the time that the wind dies and you don't have to hold very much. But for the most part, you have to develop the skill to be able to read all of that on the fly. I've shot a stage of 10 rounds where I've had 3 different wind calls in 10 rounds, from, you know, half mil left, half mil right, to dead center with no hold, all in 10 rounds, because the wind picks up, switches, dies, you know.
So I don't have too much to say about wind. It's more of a Will's thing, but I will say this. If you really want to figure out how tricky wind is, go shoot with David Tubbs sometime. I'll have him spot for you. It's an experience. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, you need, yeah, there's a difference in gear. Gear won't do shit without skill. And why everyone shoots CZs. You know, it's not my game. I was under the impression the biggest reason why everybody shoots CZs is that they have the biggest capacity magazine, but I could be wrong. Once again, not something that Will in California knows anything about.
Oh man, 10 more than 10 rounds exist?
I have a 15-round magazine in my compact Glock 48. I'll send you a picture. Okay. So there are different opinions on this. So I'll cover this. You can add something if you'd like. Me personally, I prefer the center being illuminated compared to the small part of the reticle. And there is a reason for it. Part of it is practical. So there are two reasons to use an illuminated reticle. One is that you are in truly low light, night shooting, that kind of stuff. And another one is that if you're shooting during the day, it's just a dark background. We need just a little bit of illumination to make your reticle stand out. For case number two, a whole reticle or a significant portion of it illuminated gives you more to work with. But in very low light, it's very difficult to get a reticle illuminated so thinly and evenly and so softly that it does not ruin your night vision. And I happen to look through scopes at night a lot. So just from practical considerations, it's much easier for me to get a scope with a very small portion of the reticle illuminated that does not mess with my night vision. So I am willing to take the hit during the day, and I prefer only the center or small part in the center illuminated. But it's very much a personal choice.
Yeah, so I guess I can touch on this from the competition side a little bit, in that there are certain PRS NRL matches that are at night, and those are super fun. Obviously, an illuminated reticle is pretty much a must, otherwise you won't be able to see anything. And in a specific use case like that, I would definitely prefer more of the reticle illuminated so that I can have some sort of wind call, because if only the center is illuminated and I need to hold wind, because nobody dials wind in matches, then obviously I need some of that. What would be awesome, and off the top of my head, I don't know if anybody does this or not, what would be awesome is if you had a simple tree reticle, and when you turned on the illumination, only the main vertical and the main horizontal were illuminated, because then that way I could dial my elevation, but I'd still have a reference on the illumination to hold my wind.
Seagam DRT6 and A128 does exactly that. And it's a very good way of doing this. This Leica PRS actually does not illuminate the tree, only illuminate the primary stadia. And I'm trying to convince a couple other people to basically illuminate a portion of the reticle, so it's kind of like a crosshair in the center, not just a center dot, and a couple other holes for wind, because I do agree with that. But what I don't generally want is a whole tree illuminated, because I sometimes hold, sometimes dial. But the worse the conditions, the more likely I am to dial, because in just physiologically, in difficult conditions, you want to aim with the center of your field of view.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or close to it.
Yeah.
All right, we've got a whole discussion on CZ guns. I'm going to skip that over because I don't know much about them, and Will can't buy them.
Yeah, that's a fact. Oh boy. I think that's like that. Honestly, I think for the most part, that's a purely personal preference kind of thing. You know, I like simple tree reticles. In competition shooting specifically, I make it a point, but it's something that I practice. Now, you know, again, I make sure that I put in the time and I make sure that I practice this. So I dial for everything. Again, that does a couple things. One, it always puts me in the center of the field of view. So if I miss, I have more area to work with to see my shot. And two, typically, especially on wobbly barricades and stuff like that, dialing is more accurate than holding, because if I've got to hold, 3.7, I can bracket it, sure, but now I'm kind of bracketing on the bottom of my field of view, as opposed to let me just dial 3.7 and I've got the main center of my crosshair. My favorite reticles, I think the Mil XT by Night Force is really, really well done. That's definitely one of my favorites. I think the I'm trying to think, what else do I like? The Gen 3 XR. Actually, I didn't mind the Gen 2 XR that much. I shot tangent on my competition rifle for like half of last season or 2 seasons ago. And I didn't think it was terribly bad. There were a couple instances where I had to hold over and I ended up in empty space on that like awkward, uneven transition where there wasn't part of the tree. But I think the Gen 3 XR is well done. Just kind of anything in that sort of area right there. I think the Minox reticle is pretty well done, that MR4. I think they could all use tweaks. In my Z comp, I run the Impact 2 reticle. You know, I don't know that there's necessarily a perfect reticle out there for me, but largely it's going to be personal preference. To be honest, man, I know some guys that do well with an H59 and a Tremor 3, and I don't like either one of those really. I mean, yeah, if you put a gun to my head and told me to use it, sure, I'll learn to use it. But yeah, it's personal preference, I think.
Well, I mean, a couple of things. Then on top of it, there's a lot of value in familiarity, right? If you were stuck with Tremor 3 for a year, you'd be totally fine. You'd learn to use it. So I like somewhat sparse tree reticles. Unlike Will, I do hold over and hold under. So if you look at the evolution of my reticle designs, I mean, they've kind of been changing, not based on what I think people will buy, but based on what I like, right? So I'm very fortunate that I had an opportunity to design a reticle that I want, right? And they change a little bit every time. My latest is the March's FMLT R1 reticle, and that's probably my favorite overall because I designed it for me. I mean, basically, with some limitations of specific design they're putting it and all that. I like Gen 3 XR. I like Milex steel, though it goes down more than I like. I don't need that much tree. I prefer to keep things toward the center. Delta's LRD 1T reticle is very competent. There are more and more good designs. There are some that are just plain weird. I don't like Horus. I don't like Leica's PRB. All general purpose competent reticles I like. If you were to put a gun to my head and make me pick 3, I'd say so the FML TR1 that I designed for March, Tangent's Gen 3 XR is a very natural reticle for me, and Schmidt's GR2 ID, that it is grid reticle. I liked it far more in a scope than on paper. It's a little different, but it's a very intelligent design. I think you saw it with me, right?
Yeah, I did, and I've since seen it at a few matches. And that I agree with you. That's definitely one of those that I like better in person than on paper. Because I'll be honest, when it came out on paper, I thought it was terrible.
Then we went and looked at it, and I liked it more than you did because it fits the way I shoot a little bit better. But that's I don't dial everything like what you do. So okay. Ooh. Exactly. Very timely.
Yeah, and that just goes to personal preference, man. So like I had I had several actually Vortex AMGs early on with EBR7 reticle, and I didn't mind it at all. There was a couple things I would have changed about it, but I thought generally it was pretty well done and very usable. I used it in a couple of matches, and didn't have a huge problem with the reticle at all. But obviously you couldn't like it, and there's nothing wrong with that, man. Personal preference, and it's whatever looks good to your eye.
Yeah, EBR7 is a competent reticle, but I finally sold my AMG because it was okay, but I just like other reticles more. No. My phone ring is a melody from a little video clip called "Thanks, Smokey." Okay, look it up sometime.
Yeah.
Thanks, Smokey. It's a short little 3-minute movie type thing, like a short clip.
Yeah.
If you don't find it, let me know. I'll send you a link.
Sounds good.
Yes, I did, and that's been quite successful for me, Opta. So I'm pretty happy. It's a somewhat basic reticle. The designs I did afterwards are to add a couple other minor things, but overall it worked out well for me, Opta. I'll be damned if I know.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that could end up being a long-winded answer, but to make a long story short, I think that the RPR was huge in that it kind of gave people the feeling like, hey man, I can buy one of these and go out and compete. Now, personally, I think that the production division, which is what the RPR was originally, kind of was spawned from the RPR, the production division as a whole is just completely broken. It's absolutely terrible and needs to be removed. But I think it helped grow the sport a lot because you saw all these other companies come from that. Tic Tac A1 came from that as a competitor. And then Bagara came from that as a competitor. I'm trying to think who else has them out there. Even Remington made their own production chassis thing. I threatened to call it a rifle, but I mean it's got a barrel and a trigger, I guess. But yeah, I think it was super important in that companies started focusing on something affordable for a guy that didn't want to spend, $4,000 plus on a custom rig right off the bat, which is huge because there's a lot of sticker shock that goes into precision rifle shooting and just long range shooting in general. When I'm sure Ilya remembers, you go to a place like our local shooting range here in LA, Angela's shooting range. And I would say that 95% of the shooters there are just casual shooters where, they come up and ask you how much you spent on your scope and you tell them, and then they look at you like you're crazy. Like, like you're a serial killer.
Well, you are crazy, not a serial killer that I know of.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it was absolutely huge. Now, and I actually had a Ruger RPR in 308 when they first came out, but I still think that they've now been surpassed. I think Ruger as a whole, that RPR line, they had a lot of revisions and they were plagued by a lot of issues. I don't think it's terrible, but I do still recommend some of the newer offerings from some of the newer companies, especially Tikka, over Ruger. But just in general, that concept was absolutely huge.
Yeah, so concept was huge. Ruger did a good job with it. It is a little crude. There are too many sharp edges and all that. And the stock barrels, they had the first batch was really good, and then it went downhill. Tikka barrels always consistent. I don't know how they do it. Okay. All right. Max is schooling me on USPSA, and that's his game, not mine. Yeah, okay, that sounds reasonable.
Yep.
$100 mags. Okay, I'll pass. Maybe I should try that one, actually. That could be a lot of fun. I'd get my ass whooped, but I'd have a blast. You should try PRS, Max. I'm thinking of doing like an RL22 or something like that. I'm teaching my kids to shoot. I got a nice rimfire, I'll take a T1X. That is very, very accurate. And when things restart again, I'm going to try to do an RL22 you can do with rimfire with the air guns. And I also have a very nice FX air gun. And I want to do that, and I want to get my kids into it. In terms of challenge, shooting far away with rimfire is plenty challenging enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably
NRL22 is a lot of fun. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the top shooters, we all shoot NRL22 because it's a lot of cheap trigger time. And I mean, man, honestly, shooting a 22 out to 300 yards will teach you some really good wind calling.
Oh yeah. Sure. Like I said, why do you think I shoot subsonic blackout to 700?
Yeah.
And because at this point the bullet drops like this, basically. It's like diving like a ballistic missile.
Yeah. Lobbing mortars out there for sure.
Yeah. It's challenging. You miss your... It makes distance... Normal distance is not that hard. It makes distance challenging. If you miss your distance call by 4 yards, you miss.
Yeah.
That's how steep the trajectory is. Yeah. I don't care about sound very much. I go by feel. So get your hands on a tangent theta turret, do some clicks, and you'll know what's good. And then you'll be ruined for life.
Yeah.
Because they redefined what a turret should be like. They changed the entire industry in terms of what a turret should be like.
Yeah. And to counter that, I would say if you don't want to spend that much money, don't play with a tangent. It's probably safer for your wallet. As far as between all those, honestly, personally, I I mean, I would rather have if I had to choose, I'd rather have clicks that feel a lot more defined than how they sound, because nobody wants a mushy turret. Obviously, if you could have both, I think that would be, at least for the precision rifle game, ideal, because you have an audible and a tactile indication of something moving. But as long as they're not mushy, man, that's the main thing.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So I'm friendly with a guy who owns Tangent Data, and you remember Andy Weber?
Yep.
He finally retired, spending a lot of time at his lake house.
Well deserved, man.
He's a good dude. I like him. He's he's a real gentleman. You've met him.
Yeah.
He's an interesting dude. I think you had an interesting experience. You sent a scope in, something was wrong, and he called you to talk about it.
Yeah. So it was my tangent with a reticle that I thought was canted. So and funny enough, I had a match coming up, and so I sent it out. I didn't expect it back before the match, so I was already getting my backup scope ready, mounted up, and he calls me and says, "Hey, I've got your scope sitting on my desk here, and I just wanted to see what your testing process was that made you feel like the reticle was canted." And I explained to him, and he said, "Okay, well, I've got it sitting here, and I've tested it, and the reticle is not in fact canted, and stuff like that." Super awesome guy, and I was just completely in shock that the owner, not some sales guy, not some customer service guy, the owner of this company took the time out of his day to call me on a Thursday morning at 10 a.m. from Nova Scotia. And then on top of that, I'll never forget this. I didn't even say anything, but he ended up overnighting the scope back to me. It was on my doorstep Friday afternoon from Nova Scotia to California. And I had it in time for the match. I was like, that's the most unreal customer service. And I did not ask for any of that at all.
Well, to be fair, the ZCO guys who you work with, they work on the same blueprint. I mean, they're good.
Yeah,
I'm friendly with Jeff Huber. I mean, they stand behind their stuff. They want the customer to be happy, but they're also shooters. So Andy Weber, from Tangent, he won the Beastly once or twice in UK with a 3-15 Tangent Theta.
Yep.
Like when they made the 30mm 3-15 model, the only reason they made it is that he wanted one, so he got the first one and I got the second one.
Awesome.
Still have it. That's my Tangent that I love so much.
Yeah, those are awesome scopes.
Okay. Kestrel.
Oof.
I use a different wind meter, but do you use a Kestrel or what do you use?
Yeah, so I use a Kestrel 5700. Do you really need one? No. I know a lot of top shooters that just use a phone app. There's a lot of great phone apps. And to be honest, man, like if you're, at least from the precision rifle side, you can just ask somebody that does have a Kestrel, like, hey, what's the wind reading? But in large part, man, it's mostly downfield observation, right? Because the Kestrel only measures wind where you're standing. And if your target's 500 yards away, there's a lot of wind in between you and that. So, most of us use the Kestrel just to get our ballistic data, our drops and stuff like that. And then from there, we'll just observe downrange. We'll watch grass, we'll watch mirage, we'll watch a bunch of different things to kind of get a kind of wind bracket, like, okay, it looks like on the low end, it's a 10 mile an hour, and on the high end, it's a 15 mile an hour. And if you plug that into your phone app, as long as you have good information that you put into your phone app, it'll spit out. Because I have like 4 different phone apps I use as a backup that I compare to my Kestrel, and they all line up the same as long as I'm putting in the same information all the way around. So do you really need one? No. Do I personally use one? Yeah. Just because I don't trust my cell phone, I just have this gut feeling that the one day that I show up to a match relying on my cell phone of all things to give me my ballistic information is going to be the day that it shits the bed and I will not be able to recover. Kestrels are definitely more rugged than a cell phone. I will tell you that much.
Okay. 2 points. 1, you just lost all right to call me paranoid. 2, better solution is coming. I'll leave it at that.
I appreciate that. For sure.
That's for you, Will. I mean, I know what you think, but I think
Yeah. So production division, the reason that it's broken, man. So originally it was intended for new shooters to get into the sport, right? So you were on a restricted budget. So they kind of came up with arbitrary numbers. First of all, about, oh, this should be the limit of the cost of rifle, and then this should be the limit of the cost of, like, that really matters, because there's plenty of top end guys like Dave Preston that are sponsored by Vortex that are winning matches left and right with a Vortex Gen 2 Razor. So, you know, the fact that the next guy over has got a Tangent and he's got a Gen 2 Razor, he's still kicking everybody's ass too. So, but the main reason the production division is broken is because you had pros that are sponsored by companies that want to make a name in production shoot the production division so they could get the production division trophy so it looks good on the resume. But in reality, they're not even shooting production guns. So I don't want to be this guy, but I have to be this guy because I'm honest. There's a company in particular that was, their rifle was brought up earlier about how it changed the game, and one of their pros shoots in the production division. The problem is that his production gun is the only thing that's production left on that gun is the logo that's engraved on the side of the chassis, and everybody knows it. Everybody that's in this sport knows it, and everybody's pissed about it. And I'm not saying that he's cheating or anything like that. Please don't put that out there, because he's technically shooting a factory rifle. The problem is that his factory rifle was looked over with 10 fine-tooth combs and not the one that was picked off of the shelf at Bass Pro Shop or Cabela's like you or anybody else is going to get. Because the quality control for those production division rifles that the pros shoot is like in a back room with like white gloves on and stuff. So on the surface, yeah, it's still the factory barrel and it's still the factory action and it's all that kind of stuff. So there's nothing cheating going on. You know, they didn't replace the barrel or anything like that. It's just, man, to be honest, you're not going to walk into, you know, Cabela's or Bass Pro Shop and pick up that rifle off the shelf and get the same quality that the pros are shooting. And so it just kind of ruins it for everybody, because now the newer shooters that say, oh, let me shoot in production so I can compete against guys at my same skill level, where you're not. You're competing against a pro that's also got a production gun. The problem is that he's not shooting the same production gun that you're shooting, even though they say the same thing on the side.
And he's a pro on top of it.
Yeah, and he's a pro on top of that. So, you know, it's tough, man. Realistically, like I always tell new shooters, I'm like, yo, don't think about, oh, I want to shoot production division. It's just not a thing. Just shoot open in whatever caliber you want, and if it happens to fall into production category, cool. If not, it is what it is.
Okay, Fu, I think he just went to sleep. If you're still here, we did not mean to make you sad, but I'm enjoying it nevertheless. Striker. Zeiss is doing weird thing. I don't recommend them right now. The high-end Zeiss is okay. It's good. Mid to low, they're doing weird shit. If you're shooting precision, get the Striker. You've got nice RPRs. I haven't seen that in quite a long time. And I don't know what group sizes you're shooting and all that, but that is very good for RPRs in any caliber. I've seen them throw this kind of stuff occasionally, but if you're talking about aggregate of all like 20-shot groups like I used to do with Desert Tech, I've never seen that out of an RPR. Outside of that, maybe that one sponsored guy. So. All right, I'll check them out. Fu, good night, man. Thank you for sticking with us. I know it's a long night. These things tend to run long. Takes staying power. Joe, you here? Thank you for watching, man. Always entertaining. So, Joe, I've got, if you're still here, I've got my Dark Lord of Optics logo whiskey glasses coming next week. I'll send you one. Nope. That is what Trigicon has called Ventus, and it doesn't work worth shit. Nothing else on the record. But Well, just think about what I do for a living. Good for you, Nick.
Mm-hmm.
I do this. Will does this. It's our contribution to the Second Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, ask him.
Oh
It's
man.
production as far as he's concerned, but it
Yeah.
isn't.
Listen, man, all I can say about that is there's a reason that NRL doesn't have a production division and a reason that PRS does. So, you know. Yeah. Yeah, it's a rough one.
Yeah, same
Ooh.
business. I've seen a lot of Berettas. Well, I don't like Berettas, right? Yeah, there's probably like 2 Berettas that shoot like his, and he's got them both. No others exist in this world, and that's just for mechanical reasons. If you have engineering background, and you look carefully at how 92 Berettas are designed, you can only be that accurate and that consistent if it's hand built. Look, so I haven't seen your guns, Max, and all that, but I've seen a lot of guns. I don't want to pick this argument. Maybe we can have it online, but sub more and sub half more. Sub half more consistently on a factory gun basically doesn't happen. It's a myth that happens once in a blue moon. And it can be cherry-picked gun or a cherry-picked group, but I just haven't seen it. Sub more gets a little bit more common, but not for an aggregate of significant number of groups, not with a barrel a little bit warmer, etc., etc., etc. Perhaps we'll have a definitional difference here. Yeah, maybe, I'm not so sure, but I'm gonna say something a little unpopular, right? So on the internet, everybody's guns are sub half more, right?
Yeah.
And so the guy with slave guns, his name is Max. He can actually shoot, right? So it's entirely possible. That one I'm not really questioning. But somehow, so I've been on a lot of different forums over the years, and I've shot with a lot of different, and I've met in real life a lot of those people. Most of the time when somebody says his gun is sub half MOA gun, that means that he's been shooting for 2 years, and there's one magical day when he shot a 3-shot group that was less than half an inch and declared it half an MOA gun. That's usually what happens. To really declare something a half MOA gun or MOA gun or whatever else takes quite a bit more work, quite a bit more shooting. Because 3-shot groups or 5-shot groups are statistically not significant. They really aren't. Okay, that's just the case. So most accuracy and consistency claims I see on the internet, I basically ignore. Right. Remember, earlier in the podcast I was talking about my Desert Tech 6.5 by 47. I had a 20-shot group that was 0.8 MOA. That cannot happen as a fluke. That had to be a good barrel. Right. And I'm not the greatest shot. The barrel may have been capable of better, but I'm not. That's as good as I can shoot on a really good day. Okay. Less than half MOA statistically for significant shot count for a run-of-the-mill barrel, not happening. Just not happening. Okay. How accurate is your gun, Will? Your competition gun, 6BR?
Man, it's amazingly accurate. So I guess the biggest testament to its accuracy is in one of the matches, they had a shot marker stage, and for those people that don't know what a shot marker is, it's basically I don't know, it uses like sensors, so you can put it on a paper target way out there, and it'll read your group size back to you on an iPad. Long story short, there was a stage where we had to shoot 600 yards for groups. Obviously, it was timed on the clock from the prone. I ended up winning, shooting the tightest group. It was 2.18 inches, I believe it was, at 600 yards. I think wind was, I was holding 0.8 for wind, so that'd be about a 7 to 10 mile an hour wind. So, and I wasn't, you know, I was on the clock, so it wasn't, you know, it was under a little bit of stress, not, you know, just a fair weather day at the range. So it's a very, very accurate barrel. Now, I will say that I have two 6BR barrels, and this particular one, even though they're both Bart line, is a little bit more accurate than my other one. And I've fed them both the same ammo, 105 Burger hybrids, Lapua brass, you know, CCI primers, Varget powder. But this particular barrel is a little bit more accurate than my other one.
How many factory guns have you seen that are less than half MOA?
Man, I think the first problem is that what's your definition of half MOA in terms of consistency, right? So kind of like you touched on, everybody on the internet's got I've got a quarter MOA all day rifle. Well, if you tell me that your rifle is quarter MOA all day, to me, that means that I could pick it up on any random day under any random conditions, and provided you're a good shooter, you can go out and shoot a quarter MOA group 9 times out of 10, and then the one time that it didn't is because you pulled a shot. From a factory gun, that's not something like an AI or a Desert Tech, that's basically a custom barrel.
Conventional guns, most Tikas with heavier barrels are legitimately about 1 MOA or so, or thereabouts.
Yeah, so the
and
Tikas,
it is very, very good. It is very, very good for a factory gun.
Yeah, so the Tikas, I think, to me personally, are the most consistently accurate factory rifles out there, from my experience, from seeing them at matches and range time and messing with them and things like that. And I would say probably 7 out of 10 of them are three-quarter barrels, like true three-quarter MOA barrels. Maybe you get a half MOA barrel in there if you get a really good one off the shelf. But I would say Tika barrels, even as the most consistent, are still typically around three-quarter MOA, which for precision rifle shooting, I just want to tell people that's more than enough to hit targets.
That is true. Okay, let's see. There's a whole discussion there with Max. Yeah, look, you got very lucky.
Happens to everybody.
All I can tell you. Sub-MOA on every trip is very lucky. Not sure what you're talking about, Gilberto.
I think he had referenced that ARC CeeLo chassis.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. At 100 yards where everybody shoots, no, all of the mentioned are inherently accurate calibers. Yeah. Look, so this range where Will and I used to shoot in LA called the Angeles range, it's a very, very busy range. A bunch of people come in. And it's Los Angeles, right? So a lot of people with disposable income. You saw AIs and all that sort of stuff. Most people, once again, Max Slavgansky is actually a good shot. But vast majority of people who told me how wonderfully accurate their guns are have no idea how to shoot. How do they know? Once, for shits and giggles, I set up, there was a kid, he was in his 20s, probably early 20s, with the Accuracy International and the Schmidt & Bender 5-25. He was kind of being an obnoxious dick, which happens in shooting ranges once in a while. So I set up next to him with my old Mosin Nagant, the 2876. I don't know if you've seen that gun wheel with the dual aperture sights. It's a former Mosin Finnish target gun. It won the worlds at Switzerland at some point. They made about 3,000 of them. I think 800 were imported. I have 2 of them. And for shits and giggles, I outshot that guy with iron sights, and I'm not that good of a shot. But he was walking around the range talking about half MOA groups and all that. So, I take most of this stuff with a grain of salt, but there are clearly enough accurate guns out there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we have a nice discussion of magic groups, large palms, and short fingers. Bingo. Yes, that is very, very true. So other than some real dogs out there, basically, like we talked about this earlier, if you don't roll the dice and try to buy a Remington or something, with most decent guns in the $1,000 to $1,500 range, the Tikas, the Savages, I don't like the actions now, but the barrels are still okay. A few others here and there. By and large, the shooter and the stock fit are the two things that are going to screw you over, right? Assuming you don't have one of those Remington lawyer-approved triggers. If you have a half-as decent trigger and a reasonable barrel and the stock fit that's kind of okay, the shooter's skill is what's going to hold you back the most. Okay. I recorded a podcast with another gun blogger friend of mine called Everyday Marksman. He's a really interesting guy, very cerebral guy. And he asked me then what my recommendation was for shooters. And I know that vast majority of the people just go and shoot off the bench, right? My one recommendation would be, if you're insisting on shooting off the bench, don't use the rear support, right? Have your front support, bipod or bag or something. Don't use the rear support. Rear support is your shoulder. And just shoot that way. And you will find an absolutely remarkable difference in flyers, right? And the skill you will develop out of that, other than breathing, you will develop the skill to call flyers. And it's a very, very important skill to have, because if you are able to call your own shots, right, this is the first big step to being able to actually know what you're doing. And after that, you can transition to other positions. But everybody who's using front support and rear support, if you don't have a very heavy kicking gun, you're basically tricking yourself into thinking you can shoot. Okay. I know it's a little bit harsh, but it's the truth the way I see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It makes this rear support makes a huge difference, right? There's a very, very small number of people who can shoot consistently better than one MOA without a rear support. Okay. All right, we have a couple of questions. What are the problems with Vortex Strike Eagle LPVO 126, 128? It's not a very good scope. I don't know what to tell you. I don't like that design. I mean, iBox is not great. They keep on getting a little better. There's a lot of weird distortion that's hard to dial out. It's a budget scope. Vortex sells a ton of them. It's just not a great scope. There are better options in the same basic price range. They're good guns. I mean, Christensen builds a good gun. Okay. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you're happy with the way it shoots, man,
Yeah, there's nothing I can say about this. But Christensen builds a good gun. 300 PRC is a good caliber. If you can shoot it well, nothing to.
Yeah. If you can shoot it well, don't develop a flinch or any bad habits off of it. Those big magnums tend to do that.
Yeah. Well, this one's not that big, but it's it's a good size round. All right. If it's not holding you back at all, you are a good shot. Almost everyone, there's going to be a difference. Yeah, obviously, yes. For bench or staff class, you do need the rear support. There's no question about it. But for normal people who are just shooting at the range, the biggest mistake they make is that they effectively using a gun vise, lead sled, dual supports and all that. You don't really understand what your body and the gun do with recoil if you don't do that. Christensen early had serious issues with barrels. I know that. I'm not terribly familiar with their rifles. I know their barrels got better. I still think proof is better. I have a couple of Christensen barrels, but I don't know what's happening right now with 300 PRC. So Max says there are a lot of issues. I haven't looked at it too much, so there you go. Oh, that's interesting. Your offhand grip from the butt to the forehand. How heavy is the gun?
That's a really interesting.
Yeah. So I'll let you address it in a moment. So I've seen this kind of stuff when the gun is compared to the light, and when your shoulder behind the butt pad is slightly inconsistent, a little bit more of an angle, and that's what happens on a recoil. Starts moving the butt stock to the right a little bit, and the front forend lifts a little bit. I've seen that. By holding your hand on the front, you're weighing it down, and that gives you a little bit more tolerance in how your shoulder lines up behind the stock. Make sure you're in the pocket.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. Usually it works the other way around. But I mean, if it worked for you,
on a 20-pound gun, I wonder if he's shooting a lightweight gun.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. I would tend to have the same thought as you, that it's probably a lighter weight gun, and so there was a lot more muzzle shift.
There's one other possibility. If he's shooting a gas gun, especially a large frame gas gun, you need to hold on to them a lot more than smaller stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
So he says 12 to 14 pounds. Yeah, depending on the caliber, no, that it might.
Yeah, depending on caliber, for sure.
Yep. But so with large frame gas guns, there's a lot of mass moving front and back, and the gun will start rotating in your hands. You really need to hold on to it. For those, you should have your offhand out in the front, stabilizing things.
Yeah, just a quick general note on that for a lot of guys that may or may not know, gas guns are actually inherently harder to shoot than a bolt gun because you have 3 different recoil impulses versus 1 in a bolt gun. So if you shoot a lot of bolt and then transition to a gas gun, it'll really expose a lot of the flaws that you have. Typically, if you're a really good gas gun shooter, you can transition to a bolt gun. I don't want to say more naturally because you still got to remember to run the bolt, which I see happens a lot. Guys just kind of forget that it doesn't auto load itself. But, you know, fundamentally, you'll be typically pretty sound on that end. So
against the field, I'm a better gas gun shooter than a bolt gun shooter. I have a lot of mileage in ARs.
Yeah.
Honestly, the biggest thing that helped me get better, once again, I'm by no means a good shot. Always keep that in mind, right? I'm a world-class optics nerd. I'm not a very good shot. The thing that gave me the biggest improvement is when I started shooting offhand and standing, primarily offhand with the ARs. It gave me a completely different rhythm and trigger control that I could never quite develop shooting steady positions. And it made my prone shooting worlds better. Go figure. You know, I'm curious now. I'm gonna check it out. I wonder. We're still talking about, this is a Christensen 300 pairs.
Right, yeah.
So I'll look into this. I really don't know too much. Generally, you know, I don't have anything terribly good or terribly bad to say about Christensen. So a Swamp Fox Arrowhead. So you're one of the channel supporters. I have a discount for channel members on those. A Swamp Fox Arrowhead is surprisingly competent gun, and it's in the high end of range of that. But with the discount, they're willing to give to my supporters, you'll be in the 500 range. That is good. Delta has a new LPVO called Delta Hornet. I just had a video on it. That should be in the 400 range. It's kind of like a Burris RT6. If you can find one of those, it's pretty good. I'd stick with those. Then the next step up is Delta Striker and the Vortex Razor, stuff like that. Swamp Fox Arrowhead, Delta Hornet. I would look at those two. I am not a person to tell people how to get good at shooting, although I most certainly will as we go along. But it's not so much to get good at shooting, you should talk to Will. To learn how to suck less, you should talk to me. It's not the same thing. Okay. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's different. So after this business was shooting standing and offhand started, what happened? My best days did not get better, but my worst days got a lot better. Right, so I'm probably more qualified to say how to be less bad rather than to actually be good.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get good at shooting, you got to shoot, to be honest. I dry fire a lot. I honestly religiously dry fire my competition gun every single day for at least 30 minutes. I've got one of those DFAT focus thingies on the front of my scope so I can focus in on some household objects, maybe pick something kind of small like a knob or a screw or something like that around the house and stuff like that. But dry fire helps a lot. The only problem with dry fire, if you dry fire too much and don't live fire enough, is you get used to no recoil, right? And then as soon as that recoil hits you, then your fundamentals kind of go out the window a little bit. So you gotta dry fire and live fire. But dry fire can definitely help build a lot of those, and then you just got to really honestly get out there and live fire, man.
So if where you live, they allow you to shoot in your backyard, if you have the conditions for it, go get a really nice, accurate air gun. I use FX Dreamline. Made a huge difference. Still no recoil, but you're actually hitting something, and you have to kind of figure out what wind is doing, although even that little pellet, even at a small range, at a short range, really moves around. So I shoot air guns a lot. I shoot rimfire a lot. I shoot offhand a lot. Right now, probably close to half of my shooting is offhand. But like I go talk to guys like Will, and I shamelessly pick his brain. A good friend of mine used to be a head coach of the Russian Olympic shooting team and was a world champion handgun standing, like classics shooting champion. A lot of things that those guys do and understand about shooting translate to other things. If you want to get good, you need to shoot and you need to learn. Both are required. You need to have decent equipment, but you need to be a world-class student and you need to be hardworking. And that translates to almost everything. Yeah, I'd like to. I sent an email to my Minox contact, and she hasn't replied yet. But realistically, not until next year. I'm booked, like seriously booked. Yeah, so I'll check out Christensen guns and 300 PRC. I'm very curious. So Joe's earlier question about the grip was apparently about a bolt gun.
Okay.
That was 12 to 14 pounds. There isn't, depending on what your standards are, there's enough movement in that gun where if your contact with the stock is inconsistent, you'll see that effect.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. AR is a nice gun to shoot. It's a nice combination of not too much recoil, but enough recoil to move you slightly. And I shoot my ARs without brakes, partly for recoil control. And I don't like the sound, but partly to learn and understand recoil control. There is in Russian, there is a very fundamental phrase, "продержать." It's kind of like follow through. It's a little different. So this guy I know, he so happens he was, he's a world-class shot, and he's one of the best shooting coaches in the world. He once did a sort of an informal poll with a bunch of shooters he knows, world and Olympic champions and all that sort of stuff. And the question was kind of simple. He said, you have, remember, Olympic-style shooting, let's say standing with a handgun or with a little rimfire rifle, you have 15 seconds to make a shot, okay? And you will pull the trigger on the 13th second, okay? So 15 seconds, on the 13th second, you've pulled the trigger. Which time slot of these 15 time slots is the most important for consistent accuracy? What do you think, Will?
Man, that's a good question.
It's a very, very fundamental question. It's not a simple one at all. I got it wrong, right? And then I experimented, and I understand why. But then I went and revisited my vision science book. There's some physiology involved.
So if I got 15 seconds to make a shot and I pull the trigger on the 13th, I would have to venture a guess that the most important is going to be the 14th and 15th second.
14th. Yeah, you're right. Well, I kind of gave it away when I talked about follow through, but yes. he said that even world-class shots, a majority said 12 or 13 seconds, just before the trigger pull and trigger pull. And he only said the guys at the level of those who win the Olympics every 4 years, they all said 14th second. And interestingly, because prone, bench, etc., are more forgiving, the people who shoot standing really understand that 14th second thing, because you have to kind of hold through the shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Made a huge difference for me. I was a horrible shot. Now I'm just a mediocre shot, but it's a big step. Right?
Yeah, I mean, follow through is everything. Bolt gun, gas gun,
everything.
it's huge.
And holding through on a gas gun is that much harder because of those recoil impulses you were talking about. Made a huge difference for me, right? Like for shits and giggles, now I'm shooting AKs to 500 yards and actually hitting things.
Yeah,
It makes that much difference.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, the number of people watching is going down, so we should be wrapping up. Let's go through the remaining questions. Long range, I don't know what it's about. I think these guys know each other outside.
Oh, okay. I think that's still the
Christians and barrels, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had some early issues with Christians and barrels. I thought I had it figured out, perhaps not. So I could be wrong, don't know. Oh, he's actually waiting for one. So when you get one, let me know how it is. Now I'm very, very curious. Yeah, I've heard that about Bergara. It's a good action, but I don't think the barrels are as good as the rest of the gun, personally, from what I've seen.
Yeah.
And, making a gun and making a barrel are two different things. It's one of many reasons why so many gun makers, until they get really big, don't do barrels in-house.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, making a good barrel is a fine art.
Yes. Yeah, I don't have a ton of experience with these calibers. I'm thinking about getting a 300 PRC because, like I said, the very, very long range is the one thing my fix cannot easily do for me. Mm-hmm. And barring of starting competition, and if I compete, it will be 22. I'm not itching for a competition gun, but every once in a while here in New Mexico, there are some places where I can shoot 28 miles if I get a howitzer. So I'm thinking about 300 PRC. All right, people are falling off. Good night, Nick. So Max Slav Guns wears Adidas sweats, apparently, on his channel. I'm going to get you one of these t-shirts, Max. You should wear one of these, much better. Let's see. Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. I have to look into that for sure. That could definitely lead to some inconsistency issues if, if you got a bunch of different people building the same thing.
Huh. Yeah, that would create a lot of variance.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how you do production.
Yeah.
What's the fastest you've pulled a shot? So I can pull a shot very, very fast. Yeah. Actually, hitting something is an entirely different thing. Look, I'm neither DMR nor a sniper.
Yeah, very true.
Against the field, I am better when we're doing something at moderate speed than when we have all the time in the world. Right? But I'm still not a terribly good shot, so I don't know how to answer this, really.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a sniper, but I've shot mover targets in competition. If I had to, I've never timed my first shot splits, but if I had to venture a guess, typically my pace for get down into position, acquire the target, find my lead, and then send it on a mover, between 7 and 10 seconds for the first round. Otherwise, I'm slow for getting through all the rounds that I need to. It's kind of the average pace, though.
Okay. Good night, Max. Thanks for chiming in. Always good to have you here. No, it's a new scope. They're just coming out with it, so it's not very available yet, but hopefully soon. And I think we ran out of questions. Will, we outlasted them, man.
Hey, listen, teamwork.
Yes. All right, I'm gonna hang out for a couple more minutes. It's the first part was half hour. Part 2 is almost 3 hours.
Yeah.
So I'll finish my whiskey, and Will, thank you for joining. It was really nice of you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Hope the viewers got a lot of their questions answered. It seems like it. Love to be back anytime you got any more questions, for sure.
Okay, hold on. We have a couple. Half second at most, one shot got both. You need to get that on video, man. That's an amazing shot.
That's a pretty impressive split. Shooting trap is a little quicker than getting down and shooting a mover, though.
Yeah, just a little bit. Okay. Does Will have a channel? So you see under his name it says Covert Noob 5. That's his YouTube thing, and he's been doing a little bit more with it.
Yep.
I'll drag Will over here every once in a while, and he does his videos here and there.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Different take on this, but like I said, it's competition shooting is different, so it's nice to have a different perspective.
Yep.
Good night, sir. Thank you for sticking with us.
Yep.
So my pleasure. It's long and tiring, but I gotta say I get a blast out of doing this. I enjoy it.
Yeah,
the direct interaction with people is a lot of fun. It's different than just blasting video out there.
Absolutely, a lot of fun. So I appreciate you having me on. Hope to do it again soon, and we'll get some more questions rolling on the next one for sure.
Yeah, I'll try to get Ace on this. He's an interesting dude, and I want to pick his brain about guns.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be
very interesting.
Yeah, I'd love to kind of pick his brain too on some of his designs and things like that.
He's an interesting dude.
Yeah, for sure.
Have you ever you've met him, right, at Shot?
No, I didn't meet him at Shot.
It's funniest thing. So he has this weird ass European name, and he's from Louisiana. So
interesting.
He sounds like he's from Louisiana. It's the weirdest thing. Everybody thinks he's gonna sound like me. Nope.
All right.
Not at all.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that'll be fun. That'll be a good one for sure.
Anyhow, good night.
Yep. Good night.
Thank you all for watching. Like I said, Will is gone. I'll be here for a couple more minutes, and I'm going to sleep.
All right. Night, everyone.
Take care. Whew, that was long, but fun. It's one of those really interesting things with this whole YouTube thing. I'm somewhat new at this, so taking it a little bit more seriously. I'm enjoying this a lot more than I thought I would. This is kind of weird. I'm not a replacement. I'm an improvement. I should not take this whole Rex thing. I should not be annoyed by the whole Rex thing as much as I am. I just have a hard time with bullshit. I don't know. It's a personal shortcoming. So if you are new to the channel, I have an introduction video somewhere that talks about my background. So look it up. I am a legitimate optics guy. I'm a world-class optics nerd, comparatively average shot, but I shoot a lot and I think through stuff. On optics, I am a legitimate expert. On shooting, not so much, but I'm getting better, and it's coming along. All it takes is practice and dedication, and I do the best I can. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. I'm just so impressed that so many of you can make it through my accent for 3 hours. Like I've been married for 16 years now. To this day, my wife does not know what I do for a living. Every time I start talking, she just falls asleep. So I don't do too many shooting videos because there are much better people you can learn from as far as shooting goes. Right. I enjoy shooting, and you'll see some more videos from the range. I have made a few. I'm not shooting. I'm just standing at the range. I'll probably do a few clips of shooting in terms of how to get behind the scope and all that. But that's not what you should be getting from me. The optics stuff that I do is more relevant. SPPTV, Canadian car guys. How interesting. I'll check it out. I'm not much of a car guy anymore. I used to be, but I kind of gave it up. I can't afford, in terms of time or money, too many expensive hobbies. So tactical teaming, what the hell is that? Okay. I don't know what tactical teaming is, but that doesn't sound good to me. All right. All right, guys. I'm on the verge of weight loss here, so I'm gonna go eat something. And I'm gonna say goodnight. Thank you for chiming in. I'm trying to do the live casts a couple times a month, so in a couple of weeks, I'll do something else. If you have a preference of what topic you want me to start with, please let me know. Like I said, I have a community board, or you can contact me through my website at Optics Thoughts or through YouTube. This video is gonna be posted on YouTube as a regular video. You can always add things in the comments. If there's something specific you want me to cover, please let me know. And I will bid you well. Good night.